Chapter 632. Nia Wushang was running for her life. She knew her luck had always been bad, but she didn't expect it to be this bad. After returning from the celestial pole, she concentrated on comprehending the primordial devil great technique. Just as she got some clues, she left the closed-door meditation to participate in the Devil Cultivators Trade Fair. But she was targeted by Demon Monarch Yuing. She didn't know how Demon Monarch Yuing learned about the existence of the primordial devil great technique, but it was absolutely impossible for her to hand it over. Therefore, she took advantage of his unpreparedness and ran away with her secret treasure. However, he was one of the 3 great devil monarchs in Yunzhong. How could the early stage compare with the late stage? She had no choice but to think about who could help her. She didn't know many people in Yunzhong, and the 1,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman couldn't travel across the whole continent. If she hadn't met Ling Yunhe by chance, she would have fled all the way back to the celestial pole. Even if she asked Ling Yunhe to help her, she didn't dare to have too much hope. She only had a little contact with him, so who knew whether he would really run for her or not? Fortunately, Jing Xingji was in Yunzhong and received her 1,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman. If he came smoothly, the 2 of them might have a chance if they worked together. Jing Xingji, why hasn't this bitch come yet? She had been running for half a month. In order to escape, she used most of her secret treasures. If she kept running, she might as well hand over the primordial devil great technique. That being said, Nia Wushang didn't slow down at all. She knew too well the terror of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, and didn't want to put her fate in someone else's hands again. This was the 3rd time Ling Yunhe had taken a restorative panacea. His spiritual aura was gradually overflowing, and the watery moonlight was released again. The moonlight was clear and misty, but it carried a cold killing intent. The sea beast swung its tail crazily. Its body was dripping with blood, dyeing the sea red. He took a moment to look at the other 2 people, feeling very puzzled. These 2 people hadn't taken anything like restorative panacea. So why did they still look full of spiritual aura? He didn't have much time to think. The sea beast went berserk, its strength soared, and its body was covered by aurora. Ling Yunhe retreated quickly. The moonlight sprinkled down, blocking the sea beast's attack. At the same time, a white-robed figure jumped into the sea beast's open mouth and disappeared between its sharp teeth. Ling Yunhe was startled. Just as he was about to say something, he caught a glimpse of Emotienga out of the corner of his eye. Only then did he realize that what he saw just now was her puppet, not her. Holding the Fuxing sword, the puppet was swallowed by the sea beast. Not long after, the sea beasts became even more berserk. For a moment, wind and waves surged and auroras flickered. The 3 of them controlled their respective Dharma treasures and retreated far away. Blood flowed out of the sea beast's mouth. Then, a gleaming sword tip appeared on the sea beast's abdomen. Slash! The Fuxing sword flashed with lightning as it cut open the sea beast's abdomen. The sea beast writhed madly for a while before slowly calming down. Emotienga wiped her face, then retrieved the puppet and the Fuxing sword. I finally killed him. Qin Shi's sword light flashed and went into the sea beast's huge head. Before long, he took out a colorful ball of light that looked like countless stars moving inside. Is this a beast core? Ling Yunhe nodded and said, This beast is not an ordinary beast. Its beast core contains magnetic force and tearing force. It cannot be consumed like an ordinary beast core. Qin Shi nodded and looked at him inquiringly. Fellow Taoist Ling Yu. Ling Yunhe waved his hand. Thanks to you guys we killed this beast. I don't want the beast's core. He glanced at the sea beast and said, If possible, I want its hide. Qin Shi smiled. Qin Shi showed a slight smile. Please. The 3 of them skinned the sea beast and dismembered its body. Fellow Taoist Ling, before standing up again, Emotienga looked at Ling Yunhe with a smile and reached out her hand. My crystal jade. Ling Yunhe curled his lips at her appearance. Stingy. Although he said that, he still took out the crystal jade she put on the boat and gave it back to her. Although he said he was stingy, Ling Yunhe knew dozens of crystal jades could cause a chaotic battle between nascent soul cultivators. How could he give them away for free? She was already very generous when she was willing to give him the crystal jade. Asterisk 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 a devil aura suddenly arrived, getting closer and closer to Nie Wuxiang. Nie Wuxiang didn't even dare to look back. In the past few days, she encountered countless dangers. She knew Demon Lord Moon Shadow had a tracking secret skill, and would catch up to her from time to time. If she hadn't stolen many of her master's secret techniques, she would have been caught by him long ago. She raised her speed to the extreme, but the devil aura behind her was still getting closer. She was anxious. Why hasn't Jing Xingji come yet? When I use up all my secret treasures, it'll be useless for him to come. With that thought in mind, she suddenly felt a strong spiritual aura fluctuation in front of her. She was delighted. There was someone. No matter who it was, the situation couldn't be worse than it was now. Nie Wuxiang took out a jade talisman surrounded by devil aura, and crushed it with one finger. Her speed suddenly sped up, and she flew forward. In the devil aura behind her, a figure hidden in a black cloak suddenly approached her. Little girl, do you think you're the only one with a secret technique? The voice was low and dark, and it was hard to distinguish its original tone. Demon Lord Moon Shadow was still as mysterious as usual. Nie Wuxiang kept flying and said, Senior chased me for so long without using a secret technique, so it must have cost you a lot, right? How did Senior know that this is the only secret technique I have? Then try again, Demon Lord Moon Shadow said, and the refined corpse beside him suddenly flew toward Nie Wuxiang. Nie Wuxiang's body flashed, and a black jade pendant blocked the refined corpse's attack. Nie Wuxiang shook her sleeves, and a strand of primordial devil chi flew out. It turned into a ray of starlight and suddenly exploded, blocking Yuing Devil Monarch for a moment. Just in front, hold on for a while more. With that thought in mind, Nie Wuxiang crushed another demonic talisman. 3 people, sensing each other's aura, they also flew toward her. Nie Wuxiang prayed in her heart, hoping that they were not enemies. 2 middle stage and 1 early stage. Not Mo Qingwei and the others. Nie Wuxiang was a little disappointed. She only hoped that they wouldn't make things difficult for her. Just as she was thinking about that, her primordial spirit suddenly sensed something, and the place it sensed was just in front of her. Nie Wuxiang was delighted. Were they the helpers Ling Yunhe found? Fortunately, there were 2 middle stage and 2 early stage, so there was still hope to deal with Demon Lord Moon Shadow. Nie Wuxiang rushed forward wildly. Demon Lord Moon Shadow sneered behind her. Do you think these few people can help you? You're too naive. They're coming. A black dot on the horizon was getting closer and closer, followed by 2 black clouds. Ling Yunhe's spirits rose. Mo Tiange saw Nie Wuxiang at first glance, and went to meet her. When she saw the person in front of her clearly, Nie Wuxiang was overjoyed. Tiange. This was the first time she called her by her name. When they met, Mo Qingwei's name wasn't there yet, only Mo Tiange. Meeting again after a long time, in a crisis, she instinctively called this name. Mo Tiange was stunned, then she smiled. Wuxiang. The 3 of them attacked Demon Lord Moon Shadow who was behind Nie Wuxiang. She didn't hold back at all. He mobilized the Vermilion Bird's breath in his Yang spiritual bead, and used the sword formation Vermilion Bird burns the heavens. Countless sword auras converged to form a vast and mighty sea, rushing toward Demon Lord Moon Shadow. Mo Tiange did the same. With a howl, an azure dragon appeared from the heaven and earth fan, and spat out a golden thunderbolt, which turned into a golden curtain of rain, and covered Demon Lord Moon Shadow. When the 2 of them used their full strength, the cautious Ling Yunhe was no longer strong enough. A crescent moon sprinkled down clear light to meet the refined corpse. Nie Wuxiang quickly retreated behind them, grabbed a handful of devil cores and swallowed them. The primordial devil aura on her body soared, and turned into a huge black cloud. A few juniors. Demon Lord Moon Shadow waved his cloak, and the demonic aura in front of him surged. The refined corpse rushed toward Nie Wuxiang. The demonic aura met the sea of swords and the golden rain. Chi chi chi. It was just a soft sound, but it began to swallow each other. The demonic aura was strong, so it gained the upper hand at first. However, the sea of swords and the golden rain were more tenacious. They were extinguished a little, but they kept burning, forming a corner. When the sea of swords and the golden rain began to counterattack, Demon Lord Moon Shadow was shocked. His cultivation level was higher, and his magic art was more powerful. But he was strangely restrained. Whether it was the Sea of Swords or the Golden Rain, they both carried a vast and holy aura, which seemed to naturally restrain him. Demon Lord Moonshadow couldn't help but think of the azure dragon that appeared just now. Could it be that these people practiced a cultivation technique that could restrain demonic arts? He didn't have much time to think. On the other side, Qinshi took out the vermilion bird bow. The vermilion bird's flame and the yang spiritual bead surged out again. As he pulled the bowstring, a flame arrow was formed. The bow was like a full moon, and the arrow shot toward the heavenly wolf. Qinshi let go of the bow, and the vermilion bird arrow flew out, drawing a perfect arc and shooting toward Demon Lord Moonshadow. Demon Lord Moonshadow wanted to dodge, but he was trapped by the Sea of Swords and the Golden Rain. It was like he was in a quagmire. In this urgent situation, he used a secret technique and suddenly disappeared. Chi! It was still a soft sound, but this sound was much more powerful. Although Demon Lord Moonshadow had teleported, he was still swept by the tail wind of the vermilion bird arrow, and a large mass of demonic aura was burned. Oh! He stared at the vermilion bird bow in Qinshi's hand, hatred in his heart. This was the vermilion bird bow that Juyin sect had plotted for 100,000 years. It was indeed a spiritual magic weapon with a spirit. He knew he was defeated. His original body was blocked by these two juniors, and his refined corpse was blocked by Ling Yunhe and the others. He couldn't kill them. He unfolded his cloak, rolled up the refined corpse, and tried to escape. At this moment, a dazzling light suddenly burst out from his body. His sharp intent soared into the sky, and his killing intent was threatening. A sword cultivator's sword. Demon Lord Moonshadow was terrified. It was fine if he was defeated by these juniors fair and square. But what was going on with this sword cultivator who suddenly appeared? He was a dignified late nascent soul cultivator, one of the 3 great devil monarchs in Yunzhong. Had he fallen to this point? This sword cultivator was stronger than all the sword cultivators he had met before. His strength didn't lie in his cultivation level, but in his sword intent. His whole body disappeared in the sword intent. Only the sword intent existed, but he wasn't. Therefore, when he restrained his killing intent, he was invisible and intangible. But when he released his killing intent, his sword intent soared into the sky. Since his attack didn't succeed, the sword cultivator retreated far away. He looked at Demon Lord Moonshadow with a smile and shouted at the juniors, "I'm not late, am I?" Nie Wushang snorted from afar. "Everything is settled, Great Master Qi Lai. It's better to come at the right time than to come early." Jing Xingji shouted and said to Demon Lord Moonshadow, "Senior, you're old. You have to accept your old age. Now the world belongs to us young people." Demon Lord Moonshadow snorted coldly. "You want to keep me here? You're still too young." As he spoke, he turned around, turned into a wisp of black fog, and went far away in the blink of an eye. Chapter 633. No one tried to stop Moonshadow Devil Monarch, so he escaped easily. How could it be easy to stop a great nascent soul cultivator? If they weren't careful, he would defeat them one by one. That would be their own fault. Jing Xingji deliberately chased after her and shouted, "Senior, you have to walk carefully. Don't fall and die." Emo Tinga shook her head and said, "Are you bullying the old?" Jing Xingji smiled like a ruffian. "I've always liked to bully the old. I think you're beating a drowning dog." Nie Wushang gave him a dirty look. The dignified nascent soul demon monarch was classified as a drowning dog by her just like that. She was still wearing Tiansan's attire, but she didn't disguise her voice. Ling Yunhe frowned slightly. "Fellow Taoist Tiancan?" Nie Wushang took off her bamboo hat, revealing a delicate face. "Sorry, fellow Taoist Ling. My real name is Nie Wushang." Ling Yunhe looked at her real face and was a bit surprised. In the end, he sighed. "What's wrong with a real or fake name? I only recognize you as fellow Taoist Qin Wei and fellow Taoist Tiancan." His words inexplicably made the two of them sad. Time flew. 100 years passed, and they all entered the nascent soul realm. The carefree valley of the past still seemed like yesterday. Speaking of which, among the 6 people in the carefree valley, except for the 2 who died, the remaining 4 all formed their nascent souls. Recalling the past, they really felt emotional. The five of them stood facing each other. Jing Xingji, who was surrounded by sword aura as if he was in a sword formation, said, "You're actually in the middle stage. Why are you so surprised?" Jing Xingji glanced at Mo Tiange. How long has it been since Mo Qingwei formed her nascent soul? If she can reach the middle stage, why can't I? Nie Wushang finally noticed and was pleasantly surprised. Tiange, you're in the middle stage. Mo Tiange nodded with a smile. I advanced not long ago, so I obtained a great fated chance. Humph. Jing Xingji was extremely jealous. Every time they had a great fated chance, he always followed behind and picked up the scraps. Fortunately, White Tiger and the Sword Cave were both his. Otherwise, he would be jealous to death. Guys, Ling Yunhe said, this isn't a place to talk. Let's go. 2 hours later, they were sitting in the cloud-soaring crane's ship, slowly heading towards the coast. Yuing Devil Lord doesn't have any accomplices, right? Jing Xingji asked as he walked around the ship. Nie Wushang said, isn't it too late for you to worry now? I've been worried for a long time, so I prepared for a while longer. Nie Wushang turned around and glared at him. Aren't you afraid I won't be able to hold on until you guys arrive? Jing Xingji grinned cheekily. How could you die so easily? Look at your body, you can't die even if you want to, unlucky girl. Nie Wushang clenched her teeth. Yeah, I'm not as awe-inspiring as you, sword slut. Mo Tiange stared at them and smiled. This time, Nie Wushang was even more relaxed. She could call her by her name and joke around with Jing Xingji like this. Presumably, she'd completely broken away from Master Songfeng's shadow and obtained a new life. After chatting for a while, everyone began to reminisce about the past. Jing Xingji said he only came out after 15 years of closed-door meditation in the sword cave of Fengxi Valley to understand Wanderer Ziwei's sword intent. In the end, he said proudly that he wasn't afraid of Qin Shi anymore. Qin Shi just smiled. This time, he could naturally see that Jing Xingji was different from before. Originally, he was sharp and threatening, and his whole body was like an unsheathed sword. Now his sword intent was completely restrained, but as long as he wanted, he could transform into a sword at any time. Wanderer Ziwei was indeed a genius sword cultivator. Not only did he have amazing achievements when he was alive, but he also kept all his knowledge in the sword cave after his death and passed it on. Jing Xingji kept saying that the big fated chances belonged to them, and he could only follow behind and pick up the leftovers. In fact, as a sword cultivator, neither the Yang spiritual bead nor the vermilion bird bow could compare to the sword cave of Ziwei. Moreover, he was recognized by the white tiger bead before, which was something even Feifei couldn't do. As for Nie Wushang, after returning to Yunzhong, she entered closed-door meditation to participate in the Great Primordial Devil technique. Later, for some reason, Demon Monarch Yuing pestered her to hand over the Great Primordial Devil technique. When Nie Wushang finished talking about how she was pestered by Demon Monarch Yuing, she frowned slightly. Strange, how did he know about the existence of the Great Primordial Devil technique? Yes, this is also something I can't figure out, Nie Wushang said. But no matter how I asked, he didn't reveal anything. Qin Shi tapped his knuckles and said, your devil aura is very profound, and it can't be hidden at all. Now, Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole are in contact again. So what happened in the westernmost might be spread to Yunzhong. Did Demon Monarch Yuing know your Master Songfeng's disciple? Master Songfeng's cultivation of the Great Primordial Devil technique wasn't a secret. Most of the high-level cultivators in the Celestial Pole knew about it, and the last time Master Songfeng appeared was in the westernmost area. Could it be Demon Monarch Yu Shuang? Jing Xingji said. Among the people who came from Yunzhong last time, only she went back. Maybe she leaked Wushang's situation to Demon Monarch Yuing. Nie Wushang thought for a while, then shook her head. I don't think so. Night Frost and Yuing are both nascent soul devil cultivators, and their strengths are almost the same. Demon Monarch Yuing wanted to steal the Great Primordial Devil technique because he wanted to break through the late stage and advance into the deification realm. How could Demon Monarch Night Frost give such a good opportunity to others? The Demon Monarchs didn't get along very well. If it wasn't her, How could demon monarch Yuing know about the great primordial devil technique? Qin, she said. The only person in Yunzhong who cultivated the great primordial devil technique was Mei Feng, the city lord of descending Star City. He was killed by me in the Sea of Returning Ruins, and the matter about the primordial devil steel wasn't leaked. At this point he suddenly paused. Yang Qingji. Mo Tinga slowly said this name. Guifeng demon monarch knew about the primordial devil steel, so he secretly sneaked into the underground palace in the Sea of Returning Ruins. In the end, he failed at the last step, and the primordial devil steel was obtained by Yang Qingji. Nie Wushang was stunned. Guifeng demon monarch died several decades ago, and Yang Qingji disappeared without a trace. I've never heard any news about him, Mo Tinga said. When we came out of the secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins, we were separated from Yang Qingji. We don't know where he went. He couldn't have been caught by demon monarch Yuing, right? Nie Wushang raised a possibility, but after thinking about it she denied it. That's not right. If he was caught, he wouldn't have needed to catch me. Everyone was silent, and everyone was thinking. Everyone, Ling Yunhe suddenly said. If you want to find out the reason, can you wait until later? I didn't come here for this matter. Oh sorry. Nie Wushang smiled apologetically. Fellow Taoist Ling, do you have any questions? Ling Yunhe said. Fellow Taoist Tiancan, what about your promise? Nie Wushang said without hesitation. We'll fulfill it. We'll go now. Right. Mo Tinga asked. You asked fellow Taoist Ling to pass the message. The sacrificial temple has appeared. Come quickly. What does this have to do with the sacrificial temple? Nie Wushang pursed her lips and smiled. In fact, I said that on purpose to make you pay attention to it. Come quickly. Mo Tinga shook her head. If we knew you were in danger, we'd naturally come as soon as possible. Nie Wushang was stunned, but she felt warm in her heart. She said, but it's true. Before I met demon monarch Yuing, I came out of closed-door meditation to participate in the Devil Cultivators Trade Fair, and got the news. This matter hasn't been spread out yet, but we'd better hurry up. Who knows when it'll be known by others? Mo Tinga nodded. The Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple is still in Carefree Valley, right? How did you know? Nie Wushang was astonished. At that Devil Cultivators Trade Fair, I got in touch with a former elder of Starfall City, and got some information from him. Only then did I find out that City Lord may obtain the primordial devil great art from Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple. Therefore, at that time, he lured us core formation cultivators together and fed us to the primordial devils he created, helping him reach the heavens in a single bound. Unexpectedly, his plan failed, and the primordial devil was swallowed by me. What happened in Starfall City could be said to have changed Nie Wushang's life. If they weren't trapped by Mei Feng and couldn't escape, Nie Wushang wouldn't have swallowed the primordial devil and turned into a real devil cultivator. Mo Tinga said, every dog has its day. The primordial devil steel in your hand now belongs to Mei Feng. I guessed it. Nie Wushang smiled and turned to look at everyone. How about it? Everyone, it won't be a problem to go to Carefree Valley right away, right? Qin Shi Jingxingji and Mo Tinga didn't need to ask. Only Ling Yunhe said, I'm ready for this trip. Nie Wushang smiled. That's good. But, Ling Yunhe said, since we've decided to go there immediately, can fellow Taoist Tian can tell us what kind of place it is? Nie Wushang hesitated for a moment, not knowing what to say. Mo Tinga said, fellow Taoist Ling, you've also been to the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple, so you should know about it. Ling Yunhe frowned. The Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple you mentioned is the same place as the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple? Correct. Mo Tinga nodded. Ling Yunhe pondered. There's the Vermilion Bird and the Black Tortoise. Could it be that there's also the Azure Dragon and the White Tiger? No one answered. The matter about the Sacrificial Temple was not only a great fated chance, but it was also related to the secret of the great chaos in the world. How could Mo Tinga easily say it? If she went to the Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple and got Ling Yunhe's fated chance, it could also be considered as repaying him for his help. Thinking up to this point, an idea came to her mind. The Black Tortoise's attribute was water, Among the four of them and their spiritual beasts, only she and Xiaofan had water spiritual roots. This fated chance wouldn't fall into Ling Yunha's hands, right? By the way, fellow Taoist Ling, you said before that you knew about the destruction of heaven and earth. Can you tell me now? After these past few days, Ling Yunha had completely calmed down. It was just that he'd been repressed for too long. Whether it was Jiuyan sect or Ling clan, they both made him extremely depressed. Now he also had a big secret suppressed in his heart, so his mood fluctuated. He didn't really want to do anything. In fact, even if Mo Tiange really did respond, he still had to think about it. Taoists advocated the natural way, and matters of the heart also happen naturally. Feelings that were snatched from others didn't have a good beginning, nor did they have a good ending. It was a hindrance to cultivation. Now that he heard Mo Tiange's question, he said, "This matter has to start from the immortal palace in the returning ruins sea." Chapter 634. The ice palace in the returning ruins sea had been torn apart during the destruction of the primordial era, and became an independent space. According to Ling Yunha, when it was torn apart, there were still disciples alive in the ice palace. Unfortunately, the lifespan of humans was much shorter than that of demon cultivators. Moreover, the power of tearing apart the space was so strong that it caused great damage. Only a few people survived, and were eventually wiped out. As for demon beasts, because of their long lifespans and large numbers, the most powerful ones survived. In the ice palace, Jiuyan sect obtained many Qingkuan bags, including the belongings of the survivors, which fell into Ling Yunha's hands. After returning from the Sea of Returning Ruins, Ling Yunha immediately went into seclusion. It was not until he formed his nascent soul that he saw the jade slip. By then, the world had changed and disputes arose. But Ling Yunha didn't immediately think about that because everything in Yunzhong was peaceful, unlike the celestial pole, which was in the flames of war. Until he began to travel, went to Shaoyang, searched for the current location of Yuan province, and then risked his life to discover the newly discovered continent of ghost cultivators, or demon cultivators. In the past few decades, he traveled everywhere and saw the world in chaos. Only then did he think that what was recorded in the jade slip in the ice palace might happen again. The world was in chaos, and the human world was destroyed. The jade slip didn't describe it in detail, but he was a smart person. Based on what he saw and what he heard in the jade slip, he already had a vague idea. Returning to Jiuyan sect, Ling Yunha plunged into the library and flipped through the ancient books collected by the sect. Gradually he discovered this secret. As the number one clan in Yunzhong, Jiuyan clan had a very deep foundation in Yunzhong. They had an even more extensive collection of books. Since the immemorial age, there were not many books left, but there were always some clues. Ling Yunha connected the dots and came to this conclusion. Now that all the continents were in conflict, the world might be in chaos, and the end of the chaos would be the destruction of heaven and earth. However, when he reported this conclusion to his elders, it didn't attract much attention. Immortal Yuanmu thought that these words were not enough to prove that this was the reason for the destruction of the primeval age. Even if it was, the world might not be in chaos. Cultivators of human, demon, and ghost paths were enemies. In the past 100,000 years, there had only been temporary peace, not eternal reconciliation. Ling Yunha knew what Immortal Yuanmu said made sense, but he was still worried. He had been traveling around all these years, and had a deeper understanding of the chaotic situation in the world. However, no one listened to him, so he could only suppress it in his heart. Mo Tiange couldn't help but think that compared to Ling Yunha, wasn't she much luckier? The Lord Taoists of Xianqing school trusted her unconditionally, and even used the whole school's power to help her. If it weren't for that, she would have ended up like Ling Yunha today. Even if she had a lot on her mind, she could only rely on herself. Having said that, Ling Yunha looked at them and said cautiously, "Fellow Taoist Mo, since you asked that question, you must know more than I do. I don't have any other request. I just want to ask you, if it's about this matter, please allow me to be your companion." Nie Wushang and Jing Xingji were confused. Jing Xingji said, How long has it been since we last met? Are you two up to something again? Nia Wushang kicked him. Be quiet. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi glanced at each other. Qin Shi said through voice transmission. It's not necessarily impossible. This isn't just about the two of us. Mo Tiange nodded to show that she understood. The world was in chaos, and the end of the world was coming. This was the world's matter. They didn't make it public, because it hadn't been confirmed yet. Under uncertain circumstances, rashly announcing this matter would inevitably cause panic. Besides, all the clues were in their hands. They wouldn't be reconciled if they didn't find out the truth themselves. However, they weren't great enough to shoulder the fate of the world alone. In fact, even if fellow Taoist Ling didn't say it, I still had to tell you about this matter. Mo Tiange sighed. On the path to immortality, although I've met many people, only a few of them are trustworthy. If fellow Taoist Ling is willing to travel with me, I'd be more than happy to do so. As she said that, her gaze fell on Jing Xingji and Nia Wushang. The same goes for you, Tiange. Nia Wushang couldn't help but ask upon seeing her serious expression. Is what fellow Taoist Ling said true? Mo Tiange nodded, and slowly told them about what happened to the 6 Dao palaces at the bottom of the Eastern Sea not long ago. She also didn't conceal the matter about the 5 spirits' sacrificial temple anymore. These things were no longer fated chances for the two of them. Instead, they were responsibilities related to life and death. Nia Wushang and Jing Xingji were shocked speechless, but Ling Yunhe heaved a sigh of relief. What Mo Tiange said confirmed his conjecture and put his heart at ease. At the same time, it also let him know that he wasn't alone and that he had a companion. Sure enough, I'll do my best. After a long time, Jing Xingji said, if what you said is true, there's no need to say anything else. I'll definitely help. This kind of matter wasn't the responsibility of just 1 or 2 people. Saving people was equivalent to saving oneself. He was selfish, but he wasn't stupid. Nia Wushang also didn't hesitate. Me too. Would I lie to you about this kind of matter? Qin Shi paused for a moment, then said to Jing Xingji, after we come out of Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple, you'd better go back to Gujian sect. This is a critical moment, so don't worry about your face. We need Gujian sect's help. Senior Yuanying will definitely believe you. Jing Xingji glared at him and said very indifferently, who cares about my face? Qin Shi ignored him and swept his gaze over everyone. If you don't have any objections, then it's settled. Whether it's to save ourselves or to protect the things we value, we'll advance and retreat together. We'll find the 5 spirits' sacrificial temple and find out the truth of the matter. The others didn't have any objections, so this matter was decided in a seemingly hasty manner. The magic weapon ship sailed slowly for a few more days before it finally reached the north coast. They didn't set out immediately. Instead, they took advantage of this time to recuperate, cultivate, refine magic weapons, and so on. These days, Nia Wushang had been crazily chased by Moon Shadow Devil Monarch. Although she wasn't seriously injured, minor injuries were unavoidable. It took her half a month to prepare properly. Later, everyone disembarked. Ling Yunhe put the magic weapon ship away, and the 5 of them rushed to Carefree Valley. Nascent soul cultivators were extremely fast, and Carefree Valley wasn't far from here. In just one day, the 5 of them arrived at Jiaoling Mountain. However, the scene in Jiaoling Mountain shocked them. On the periphery of Jiaoling Mountain sat many scattered cultivators, ranging from the foundation building realm to the core formation realm. Nia Wushang was dumbfounded. Is this a market square? Ling Yunhe frowned and called over a foundation building cultivator in Julian sect's disciple uniform. When that foundation building cultivator saw Ling Yunhe, he was extremely nervous. Disciple Ji Tian greets Grand Supreme Elder. Dispense with the formalities. Ling Yunhe didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Why are there so many cultivators here? What are they doing here? Ji Tian said respectfully. Reporting to Grand Supreme Elder, they're all here to look for treasures in Carefree Valley. Look for treasures? Ling Yunhe was even more surprised. Carefree Valley was quite famous in Yunzhong, but its location was rather hidden, so not everyone could find it. How could it be like now, where it practically became a market square? Grand Supreme Elder, there's something you don't know, Jitian reported. Not long ago, a treasure map appeared in every city's market square, and the location of Carefree Valley was marked on the map. Now both One Leaf Island and North Pole Island have been abandoned, and resources are scarce. Therefore, although everyone thinks it might not be true, they still came to take a look. Ling Yunhe glanced at Nie Wuxiang. Upon seeing her bewildered expression, he thought for a moment, then took out a small bag from his robe and said to Jitian, "Whether it's true or not, Carefree Valley isn't a place foundation building cultivators can come to. Take this and distribute it to your companions. You should leave early." Jitian was overjoyed and said repeatedly, "Thank you, Grand Supreme Elder. Thank you, Grand Supreme Elder." With a nascent soul cultivator's gift, why would they take the risk to enter Carefree Valley? Naturally, they would leave early. Seeing Ling Yunhe's behavior, Mo Tinga felt that he had indeed changed a lot. His way of doing things was very different from before. After Jitian left, everyone didn't speak for a long time, nor did they immediately enter Carefree Valley. There was obviously something wrong with this. Carefree Valley had existed for so many years, and One Leaf Island and North Pole Island had also been deserted for several decades. How could it be so coincidental that the map of Carefree Valley appeared just as they were about to enter it? After a long time, Ling Yunhe asked slowly, "Fellow Taoist Tiancan, did the person who gave you the information leak this information?" Nie Wuxiang shook her head and denied it. "Impossible. He couldn't have leaked it. I naturally used some tricks to let him go." Ling Yunhe nodded and said nothing more. That elder from Starfall City was only in the core formation realm. With the tricks of a nascent soul cultivator, it wasn't difficult to make him never leak this information again. Then who in the world leaked the location of Carefree Valley? Was his target Carefree Valley, or the Black Tortoise Temple in Carefree Valley? Mo Tinga asked. She was asking them, but also asking herself. In any case, let's go inside first. Ling Yunhe took the lead and walked towards the entrance of Carefree Valley. After passing through the rugged rocks and arriving at the ancient tree at the entrance, Ling Yunhe took out the soul-restraining bead and easily broke the restriction on the entrance. Mo Tinga noticed that the soul-restraining bead in Ling Yunhe's hand was shining brightly and was a lot purer than the one Ling clan made. So she knew this was the soul-restraining bead left behind by Saint Guizhen. Although this soul-restraining bead was a precious treasure passed down in Juyin sect for many years, it already recognized Ling Yunhe as its master, so there was no point in keeping it in the sect, so it belonged to Ling Yunhe. Upon seeing them coming, the surrounding cultivators kept paying attention to them, but didn't dare to come forward and disturb them. Now that they saw them breaking the restriction on the entrance, their eyes all lit up. Ling Yunhe turned around and said to the cultivators in a clear voice, "Everyone, I don't need to tell you what kind of place Carefree Valley is. We won't force you to enter the valley, but you'd better listen carefully. Foundation building cultivators must not enter the valley. Otherwise, don't even think about coming out alive. Core formation cultivators should only enter the valley with 6 or more people. No Juyin sect disciple is allowed to enter the valley, no matter what your cultivation level is. Do you understand?" After a few breaths of silence, the remaining Juyin sect disciples answered in unison, "Yes, we'll obey Grand Supreme Elder's order." He was once the sect head of Juyin sect, and was also the person the Juyin sect's founder recognized as the master of the holy relic. His reputation in Juyin sect far surpassed that of ordinary nascent soul elders. Although these Juyin sect disciples were somewhat unwilling, none of them disobeyed. "Let's go," Ling Yunhe said, then turned around and entered the valley first. Chapter 635. The inside of Carefree Valley was still the same as before. Spiritual aura, devil aura, and filthy aura mixed together. Every step they took was filled with danger. But for nascent soul cultivators, it was just a piece of cake. The 5 of them easily entered the valley. Mo Tinga couldn't help but recall the strange spiritual beast, Ling Yunhe, when she saw the crack at the entrance of the valley. "Fellow Taoist Ling, where's your spiritual beast, Little Black?" Ling Yunhe searched his spiritual beast bag and released Vulture Little Black. "Here, Since Little Black hadn't advanced to the 8th rank, Little Black basically couldn't help them. So Ling Yunha only looked at it for a moment before putting it away. After looking at Little Black, Nie Wushang suddenly said, Tienga, I remember you said the first person you saw practicing the primordial devil technique produced dead aura? She was talking about Ren Yufeng. Mo Tienga nodded. Yes, Nie Wushang said. My master also started practicing the primordial devil technique a long time ago. The reason why he ended up like this was because the cultivation technique he comprehended wasn't good enough. Mo Tienga recalled Master Songfeng's ghostly appearance. How similar was he to Ren Yufeng? Could it be that the primordial devil technique really had a path leading to dead aura? As she thought about this, she saw Nie Wushang take out a shiny black stone from her robe and throw it to the side of the crack next to the dead aura crack. Magic crystal? Mo Tienga recognized it at a glance. It was the magic crystal Mei Feng used to control them when they fell into his trap. It was said to be the main material of the corpse soul technique. It could absorb people's energy and control their souls, turning them into walking corpses without them knowing. It was a first-class evil item. Nie Wushang said, Look, this thing can really absorb dead aura. Everyone saw black dead aura being slowly absorbed into the magic crystal, making it look fuller and brighter. What do you want dead aura for? Mo Tienga asked. Nie Wushang smiled. It's a secret. After the magic crystal finished absorbing the dead aura, they were about to enter the valley. Mo Tienga thought for a moment, then released Little Feng and Fei Fei from the spiritual beast bracelet. The biggest use of the spiritual beast bracelet given by Devil Monarch Night Frost was that she could carry several spiritual beasts with her, without worrying about them delaying her cultivation. So she also put Little Feng in her spiritual beast bracelet. When the three of them saw Xiao Feng, their eyes widened, especially Ling Yunha. Jing Xingji and Nie Wushang were more or less used to it. From time to time, the two of them would come up with something that would make people envious, jealous, and hate them. Huh? Nie Wushang fixed her gaze on Fei Fei. This doesn't seem to have an 8th rank. Mo Tienga said, This is my spiritual beast Fei Fei. You've all seen him before. He's only in the 7th rank, and he can transform because of other reasons. Fei Fei casually cupped his hands at them and stood to the side. Jing Xingji stared at him for a good while, then suddenly said, So the remaining white tiger's breath was subdued by you? When Fei Fei heard this, she turned her head and looked at him seriously for a while. Then, she suddenly realized, So you're the person that the pearl of the white tiger recognized as its master. You've really lucked out. Both of them had the aura of the white tiger on them at the same time, so it was very easy to sense them. Jing Xingji curled his lips. What a rude child. No matter what, I'm from the same generation as Qin Shoujing. Do you know that you have to address him as martial uncle? Humph. Fei Fei turned her head. Without me, would you have the pearl of the white tiger? Without me, you would have the pearl of the white tiger. Fei Fei was speechless and retreated in defeat. The others laughed. Little Feng saluted them. Little Feng greets fellow Taoists. Although she was Qin Shi's spiritual beast, she was also an 8th-ranked demonic beast cultivator. In front of nascent soul cultivators, calling them fellow Taoists was enough. After exchanging greetings, the group of 5 people and 2 demonic beasts set out again. Fei Fei lead the way. Fei Fei was the one who discovered the Black Tortoise sacrificial temple, so Mo Tienga ordered it without any politeness. Fei Fei didn't object. Although it had a bad temper and was stingy, it wouldn't refuse work that needed to be done. After taking a moment to identify the direction, they picked a direction to go. Compared to their trip to Carefree Valley 100 years ago, their lineup this time could be said to be gorgeous. All kinds of obstacles on the way weren't a problem at all. Soon, they arrived at the place where the 3 giant apes appeared. Follow me. Fei Fei snapped its fingers, picked a strange angle, and drilled into the bottom of the rocks between the trees. For this reason, it even deliberately revealed its true form. After walking for a while, and seeing that it was getting harder and harder to walk, Jing Xingji couldn't help but ask, You're not deliberately retaliating against us, are you? Fei Fei rolled its eyes. I'm free. Jing Xingji still wanted to say something, but the two of them suddenly stopped at the same time. There's a situation. The 5 people and 2 demonic beasts stopped in their spots. Among them, Jing Xingji was also in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Sword cultivators focused on cultivating a single sword, so their power was greater. Correspondingly, they didn't cultivate much divine sense, and didn't have any special secret techniques, so their warning ability was inferior to that of traditional Dharma cultivators. After a while, Jing Xingji also uttered an ha, followed by Nie Wushang and Ling Yunhe. Why are there so many people? Ling Yunhe was extremely astonished. Everyone looked at each other. Their divine senses clearly sensed that many nascent soul cultivators were coming this way. Inside Carefree Valley, the auras were mixed so they couldn't sense far. However, as nascent soul cultivators, they couldn't be wrong about this. It wouldn't be strange if there were only core formation cultivators. The spiritual plants and wondrous things in Carefree Valley were extremely attractive to core formation cultivators. But if there were nascent soul cultivators, Carefree Valley basically wouldn't be in any danger. If there was a need, it was enough for them to come alone. There was no need to invite helpers, let alone so many people. You guys find a place to wait for me. I'll go take a look. Ling Yunhe made this decision in just a moment. The others looked at each other then nodded in agreement. The 4 of them more or less had enemies in Yunzhong, especially Emotinga and Qin Shi. They had offended countless nascent soul cultivators during their trip to Sea of Returning Ruins, and every one of them was an influential figure in Yunzhong. Only Ling Yunhe, as a native of Yunzhong, had a wide network and was quite popular, so the cultivators in Yunzhong would more or less give him face. Ling Yunhe made some preparations. He gently waved the moonlight essence he was holding in his hand, scattering it into countless fragments that entered his sleeve. A lot of flowing moonlight essence then appeared on his cuff. Then he followed his original path and went to the entrance of the inner valley. Before long, Ling Yunhe stopped in front of the big tree where he rested when he first entered Carefree Valley. He had already seen the first person. He was wearing a black cloak and was surrounded by devil aura. Next to him was a refined corpse. It was Demon Monarch Moon Shadow from the North Sea not long ago. Ling Yunhe narrowed his eyes slightly. Could it be that the leak of Carefree Valley this time was caused by Demon Monarch Moon Shadow? They stayed on the North Sea coast for more than half a month, so it was possible. However, what did Demon Monarch Moon Shadow see? Why did he have to make life difficult for them? After Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, there were several cultivators in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, including devil cultivators and Dao cultivators. For example, Nan Guotian from the Dawning Pill sect, Daoist Ru Yi from the 5 Elements Valley, and a few nascent soul realm cultivators from the Juyan sect. Following them were Demon Monarch Night Frost, Supremacy Xuxiang, Han Shizhi, Ju Wu, Old Donkey Ma and others. Finally, there was a skinny young man dressed in black. A ghost-faced banner floated behind him, and the devil aura around him was faint. If not for his shocking aura, he did not look like a devil cultivator at all. Ling Yunhe recognized them one by one. As he was once the sect master of the Juyan sect, he basically knew all of them. The last one was Yangqingji. Back then, during the change in the Returning Ruin Sea, Guifang Demon Monarch died, and Yangqingji disappeared. Guifang City was occupied by another devil cultivator in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. A few decades later, Yangqingji appeared again. He had already formed a devil infant and advanced to the nascent soul realm. Seeing Yangqingji appear, the practitioners in the cloud all thought that he would go to take back Guifang City. Unexpectedly, Yangqingji returned to Guifang City, but he did not take back the position of the city master. Instead, he asked to take back his personal belongings. How shocking was the inheritance of a devil cultivator in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. The new Guifang City master naturally would not agree. He was an experienced nascent soul realm cultivator, which was higher than Yangqingji by a small realm. Moreover, he controlled Guifang City, so he had nothing to fear. Under such circumstances, Yangqingji could only choose to take action. With a wave of the ghost-face banner, the flag of Guifang City automatically submitted to him. With the appearance of the Heavenly Demon Tower, the middle-stage devil cultivator admitted defeat without much action. He could not defeat the items of the demon venerable. With the difference in realm, he could only comfort himself in this way and admit defeat. It was just going to Guifang City. No matter how precious the items were, they were not as important as his life. However, Yang Qingji did not take back Guifang City as everyone thought. Instead, he did as he said at the beginning. He took back his personal belongings and left Guifang City again. The new Guifang City master was overjoyed. In the end, because of this defeat, he lost face. Not long after, he was defeated by another middle-stage devil cultivator, and Guifang City changed hands again. And Yang Qingji did not care about all these. He left Guifang City and disappeared. And now, Yang Qingji actually appeared here. Ling Yunha's gaze froze. He stood under the tree and did not move. All the nascent soul realm cultivators stopped under the tree and gathered silently. The first to walk out of the line was a cultivator from Juyan sect. He said, "Junior brother Ling, why are you here?" Ling Yunha nodded at this person and said, "Senior brother Yuan, I was entrusted by someone to come here to settle a karma. What are you guys doing?" This senior brother Yuan was a middle-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. He looked like he was in his 30s. He said, "We received news that there is an ancient sacrificial temple in Carefree Valley, so we came to take a look." Ling Yunha paused when he heard that, and his gaze slowly shifted to Demon Monarch Yuing. Did Senior Yuing say that? Senior brother Yuan nodded. Yes. Ling Yunha smiled and raised his voice. Senior Yuing, after we parted at the North Sea, although you were defeated, it was normal for the 5 of us to team up. Senior, you don't have to be so petty, right? He said this deliberately for the others to hear. As expected, when they heard that, all the cultivators shifted their gaze to Demon Monarch Yuing. They all knew Ling Yunha's background. He had only formed his nascent soul for a few decades, and his cultivation had just stabilized. He said that the 5 of them would team up so calmly. Presumably, his companion's cultivation would not be too high. Demon Monarch Yuing actually lost to such a person? Everyone found it unbelievable. Demon Monarch Yuing was one of the 3 great demon monarchs in Yunzhong. Besides his cultivation, his strength was also top-notch. Under the cloak, Demon Monarch Yuying's voice was still very steady. Don't talk so fast. Ling family's boy, we are all here for the treasure today. It is useless for you to say all this. Why is it useless? Ling Yunha's smile was very perfect. If not for the battle at the North Sea, I'm afraid Senior would still be chasing after fellow Taoist Tiancan to snatch the primordial demon great technique. Why would you appear here? Just as Ling Yunha finished speaking, Yang Qingji, who was the last to leave, suddenly looked at them with a flash in his eyes. Chapter 636. Ling Yunha deliberately changed the topic to the North Sea. The others weren't stupid. They didn't make things difficult for Moon Shadow Demon Lord, nor did they ask Ling Yunha. They just watched from the sidelines. After the incident in the Sea of Returning Ruins, although Juyan sect didn't announce the loss of the Vermilion Bird Bow, it quickly spread throughout Yunzhong. Almost all high-level cultivators knew about it. At that time, Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others guessed that Huayan Temple and Yu Mountain Academy most likely knew about the existence of the sacrificial temple. Moreover, they had been planning for so many years, so the matter was leaked. However, it was meaningless to pursue this matter. The Vermilion Bird Bow was gone, so Juyan sect didn't say anything. However, the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple, the Divine Beast Bow, and the Psychic Magic Weapon had left a deep impression on many nascent soul cultivators, making them restless. Therefore, when they heard that there might be a sacrificial temple here, some of them came. They were not afraid that this was fake. With so many people, no one would be able to set up a trap to catch them all in one fell swoop. And the current situation was that the Moon Shadow Demon Lord was not satisfied, and was purposely causing trouble for Ling Yunha and the others. Junior Martial Brother Ling. What do you mean? Senior Martial Brother Yuan frowned and asked slowly. Ling Yunha stared at him and said softly, Senior Martial Brother Yuan, let's talk about it when we get back to the sect. Senior Martial Brother Yuan paused for a moment and finally nodded. Ling Yunha knew that the sect was very dissatisfied with him for going with them without telling them. Although Emotienga caused a big disturbance in Yunzhong, the only people she really offended and suffered was Julian's sect. After losing the Vermilion Bird Bow, if Master Taoist Yuanmu wasn't calm enough, he would have rushed to the Celestial Pole to fight with them when he learned they were cultivators from Xianqing School in the Celestial Pole. This time, they actually learned from others that Ling Yunhe went with them privately. This was simply a slap in the face. Therefore, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan and the others came without notifying Ling Yunhe. For one thing, they didn't want to let go of this opportunity. For another, they wanted to warn Ling Yunhe not to act recklessly. Ling Yunhe was a smart man. As soon as he saw Senior Marshal Brother Yuan and heard his words, he knew why they came. So he just said they would talk about it when they got back to the sect. This meant he knew what he was doing and didn't forget the sect. Of course, Senior Brother Yuan and the others wouldn't let others laugh at them for nothing. When they heard this, they temporarily let it go. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord snorted coldly and said, "It's up to you whether you believe it or not. It's up to you whether you want to go or not." He had no intention of explaining at all. He knew that he didn't need to explain at all. As long as these people had this thought in their hearts, it was enough. Moreover, when he released the news, he made it clear that he was here to cause trouble. Just as he finished speaking, Yang Qingji, who was at the very back, strode forward, staring at him as he asked, "Elder Yuing, what do you want the Great Prime Devil Art for?" Although Yang Qingji was an early-stage nascent soul cultivator, none of the cultivators in Yunzhong dared to treat him as an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. He had the Heavenly Devil Tower, which was the sacred item of the Devil Lord. Even an ordinary mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was defeated by him. Yet he was able to do it as if it was nothing. The Moon Shadow Demon Master said indifferently, "I didn't snatch anything from your Guifang city. I don't have to account to you, do I?" "Naturally, Elder doesn't have to account to me." Yang Qingji's face was pale and thin, but his momentum became fiercer. "Junior is just worried that Senior might have misunderstood something and wasted your efforts. You don't have to worry about that." Under the cloak, the Moon Shadow Demon Master's expression couldn't be seen clearly, but his tone was mocking. "Fellow Taoist Ling," Danxia Sect's Nanguitian said with a smile, "where are your companions?" If they weren't enemies, Ling Yunhe would have applauded him for asking this question. When they came here, they didn't hide their whereabouts at all, so the cultivators outside Carefree Valley all saw who his companions were. Once they heard what he said, they immediately knew who he was asking about. Nie Wushang and Jing Xingji aside, Emotienga and Qin Shi were very famous in Yunzhong. During their trip to returning Ruin Sea, they cheated Julian's sect, and when they came out, the heavenly tribulation caused the destruction of One Leaf Island. Perhaps the changes in heaven and earth afterward were also related to them. If one were to ask the nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong who they hated the most, apart from Julian's sect, probably no one would say the two of them. However, if one were to ask who they hated the most, they would firmly occupy the top of the list. Apart from robbing Julian's sect's things, these two calamities indeed didn't do anything too excessive, but their existence was simply a disaster in Yunzhong. Fine, in any case, everything was irredeemable, and they were disciples of a large sect in the Celestial Pole, so they didn't feel like making a fuss about it. But why did they come to Yunzhong? After robbing Julian's sect's Vermilion Bird Bow, did they also want to rob something from Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple? It was fine if they didn't know, but now that they knew, how could they let go of this possibility? Their current mentality was just like what old Donkey Ma said. How could we let those two juniors take away our Yunzhong's things? In any case, they didn't have to pay to go and take a look. Therefore, Nan Guitian's words were very popular. Everyone wanted to ask Ling Yunhe, whose side are you on? Could it be that you're deliberately befriending them and waiting for an opportunity to take revenge for the Vermilion Bird Bow? Ling Yunhe didn't answer this question. He just nodded at Nan Guitian and said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, no matter why you're here, this Carefree Valley doesn't belong to my family. I don't have the right to stop you. Please do whatever you want to do." As soon as he finished speaking, someone shouted, "Ling Yunhe, what do you mean by that? Did you really form an alliance with those people in the celestial pole to rob Yunzhong's things? Ling Yunha's eyes turned cold as he looked directly at that cultivator. This was a devil cultivator with a rather unfamiliar face. His cultivation level was also average, as if he had just advanced. However, his expression was arrogant, and he really didn't look like an ordinary devil cultivator. For him to suddenly ask such a question at this time and place, it was unknown whether someone had instructed him to do so. He put on a fake smile and said, "I've said before that I'm here on someone's request to settle a karma. All of you are top-notch cultivators in the human world, so I don't need to say anything to know how serious it is to bear karma for no reason. What celestial pole, Yunzhong? I'm too small to bear such a big hat. Even so, why didn't you even inform your own sect? You're obviously up to no good." Ling Yunha raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Your Excellency, may I know your great name?" The devil cultivator's aura weakened when he heard that, but he shouted again, "What do you mean? Are you looking for an opportunity to take revenge?" "Nothing," Ling Yunha said slowly. "It's just that your Excellency was so enthusiastic that I almost thought you were a descendant of Julian's sect who was stranded outside." "Don't talk nonsense," the person said angrily. "Your behavior is strange, so why can't I ask?" "I can ask, but..." Ling Yunha's expression turned cold. "What's your Excellency's identity? What right do you have to ask about my Julian sect? Are you trying to use this to sow discord?" There were no fools among the nascent soul cultivators. Once he heard Ling Yunha's words, the devil cultivator shut up. He finally knew that being a sect master was better than him. If he continued talking, he wouldn't gain anything other than losing face. "Everyone," Senior Marshal Brother Yuan stepped forward at the right time. "Outsiders don't need to worry about Julian sect's matters. No matter what my junior Marshal Brother Ling did, he didn't do anything that violated morality. An ownerless treasure belongs to those who are capable. If you want to fight for it, Junior Marshal Brother Ling didn't stop you. If you want to fight for it, please go ahead. However, if you try to sow discord, don't blame Julian sect for being impolite." When he said the last sentence, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan revealed a murderous aura. Even though none of the Julian sect cultivators present had a late nascent soul cultivation base, no one dared to belittle his words. For the past tens of thousands of years, Julian sect had always been a big shot in Yunzhong. Its strength far surpassed the other sections. Putting everything else aside, perfected Yuanmu was still holding the fort in the sect. Hee. Amidst the silence, old Donkey Ma suddenly laughed softly. His chrysanthemum-like old face scrunched up into a ball as he said in a gentle voice, "Fellow Taoists, what are you waiting for here? The matter of fighting for the treasure naturally depends on your own means." The atmosphere relaxed. Supremacy Su Xiang's loud voice rang out as well. "That's right. So much nonsense and a waste of time. If you want to leave, leave quickly." This time, the late nascent soul cultivators who came were only Demon Lord Yu Ying, Demon Lord Night Frost, Old Donkey Ma, and Supremacy Su Xiang. This time, it was different from the Sea of Returning Ruins. It was only Demon Lord Yu Ying's one-sided statement. It was already good enough that so many late nascent soul cultivators came. Yu Mountain Academy and Huayan Temple only sent Han Shizhi and Jiewu. More than 50 years had passed since the Sea of Returning Ruins. With the power of the Holy Relic and the harvest from the Sea of Returning Ruins, the 5 people who were recognized by the Holy Relic entered the nascent soul realm one after another. First it was Han Shizhi and Ling Yunha. Then it was Mo Tiange and Yang Qingji. Jiewu's cultivation level was slightly lower, but not long ago, he also successfully advanced to the nascent soul realm. The age at which they advanced to the nascent soul realm was astonishing. Aside from Han Shizhi, who was slightly older, the others were all less than 300 years old. In the past, this could be considered shocking. Their strength was also astonishing. Aside from Wu Minglu, the other 4 were all top-grade magic weapons. Yang Qingji easily defeated a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator, with the help of Heavenly Devil Tower, was a good example. As for Han Shizhi, although Wu Minglu wasn't originally a magic weapon, his cultivation technique was more useful than a magic weapon. In addition, he had an extraordinary comprehension ability, and was a first-class genius among Confucian cultivators. After Wu Minglu turned into his own, his progress was astonishing. He was only one step away from advancing to the middle stage. Wu Minglu was also refined into a magic weapon by him, which was no different from other holy relic. "Old Yu, let's go!" Supremacy Su Xiang urged impatiently. Demon Lord Yu Ying was very unhappy that his name was called Old Yu. "What does it have to do with me? I didn't invite you here." "Oh, why are you so petty? No matter what, we've been friends for more than 1,000 years. Leaving aside the messy entanglement, Senior Marshal Brother Yuan whispered to Ling Yunhe. "Junior Marshal Brother Ling, aren't you coming with us?" Ling Yunhe replied apologetically. "Senior Marshal Brother Yuan, I'm sorry. What I said just now was the truth. After I settle this karma, I'll return to the sect and explain everything to you." Senior Marshal Brother Yuan nodded and didn't say anything else. "Be careful." Right after he said that, he led the other Juyan sect cultivators and left with Demon Lord Yu Ying. Ling Yunhe stood there for a while before he turned around and left alone. Chapter 637. Ling Yunhe restrained his breath and hit his tracks, then walked through the rubble. There were so many people here, and some of them wanted to use him to find Emotienga and the others. He had to be careful and get rid of the people following him. The cloud-soaring crane weaved left and right, moving forward and backward. The terrain of the Carefree Valley was complicated. Coupled with the fact that the cloud-soaring crane deliberately hid its tracks, it did not take long to shake off the people who were secretly following it. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt a breath approaching, and someone said, "Fellow Taoist Ling, wait." He was familiar with this voice. Ling Yunhe turned around in surprise and saw Yang Qingji coming out of the rubble. Yang Qingji took some time to find Ling Yunhe's position and slowly walked towards him, his face still expressionless. "Fellow Taoist Yang?" Ling Yunhe frowned slightly. Yang Qingji nodded. "Fellow Taoist Ling, are you going to meet with fellow Taoist Tianqin and fellow Taoist Mo?" Ling Yunhe didn't need to hide this, so he said, "Yes." "What can I do for you, fellow Taoist Yang?" "Take me there," Yang Qingji said. Ling Yunhe was stunned. Yang Qingji was with Emotienga and the others during the 20 years when the palace was closed in the returning ruined sea. This wasn't a secret. They must have gone through trials and tribulations together, so they must be friends. However, he just took him there without saying goodbye. "Fellow Taoist Ling, you can ask them. If they don't agree, I won't force them." Ling Yunhe thought for a moment, then took out a summoning talisman from his robe, said a few words, and sent it. Before long, the summoning talisman came back with their reply. "Bring him there." "Let's go," he said. They agreed. Before long, Ling Yunhe appeared in front of the four people with Yang Qingji. Compared to before, Yang Qingji didn't look like a devil cultivator at all. His whole body was covered with condensed but well-concealed devil aura. His youthful face was delicate and handsome, but he was pale and thin. People who didn't know him would only think he was a young man who just entered the devil path, not a nascent soul devil cultivator. They greeted each other and introduced little Feng and Fei Fei. Yang Qingji didn't say any polite words and went straight to the point. "It'll be very difficult for you to go back safely." Emotienga was stunned and asked, "Fellow Taoist Yang, what do you mean?" Yang Qingji said nothing and turned to look at Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe smiled bitterly and described what had happened earlier. He said, "They are hostile to me. Even the Juyan sect does not believe me." On the surface, the Juyan sect had temporarily given up on questioning him. However, the person they had sent out was Senior Brother Yuan. This spoke volumes. This Senior Brother Yuan was a clansman of perfected Yuan Mu. Emotienga heaved a sigh. "Fellow Taoist Ling, I've implicated you." Ling Yunhe shook his head and said calmly, "This is my own choice." He did not betray the Juyan sect. It was just that the Juyan sect could not understand him for now. "What about you? Fellow Taoist Yang, why are you looking for us?" Qingji didn't finish his sentence. The corners of Yang Qingji's mouth curled up, and it looked like he was smiling. "Since I came to find you, I'm naturally on your side." Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Although the five of them were quite strong when they teamed up, They were nothing in front of so many nascent soul cultivators. Yang Qingji actually wanted to join them under such circumstances? Compared to them, I trust you more, Yang Qingji said. In more than 20 years in the sea of returning ruins, I was the weakest, but I was able to escape safely. I can see that you are all people who keep your word. If not, I wouldn't have come to join in the fun. Then what does fellow Taoist Yang want? Qin Shi asked again. Yang Qingji's gaze fell on Nie Wushang. I want to know where the primordial devil great technique came from. Nie Wushang's eyes moved, but she didn't say anything. She could see that Yang Qingji was very insistent. The five of them simply expressed their opinions. Jing Xingji and Qin Shi reserved their opinions, while Mo Tiange, Nie Wushang, and Ling Yunhe agreed and accepted Yang Qingji into their group. Fellow Taoist Yang, there's something I have to tell you first. The primordial devil stone tablet in the Black Tortoise Temple is probably the one in Wushang's hand. If you want to use it to search for the origin of the primordial devil great technique, you might as well exchange research with Wushang. If you go to the Black Tortoise Temple, you might return empty-handed, Mo Tiange said seriously. Yang Qingji's expression didn't change. If that's the case, I won't ask for much. Just like that, a new alliance was formed. Everyone laid out the situation and talked about it. Among these cultivators, Devil Monarch Night Frost is old friends with us. And there's nothing in the temple that interests him. So he'll probably give us face. As for Wushang, he's not the type to argue. Years ago, I killed his junior martial brother. But he can also distinguish right from wrong. These two people basically won't become enemies. Devil Monarch Moon Shadow and Han Shizhi. Needless to say, they have a grudge against us, so they probably won't let it go easily. As for Nan Guotian and Old Donkey Ma, they're all opportunists. It's fine if there's no conflict of interest. But if there's a conflict of interest, they probably won't hesitate to turn hostile. Mo Tiange counted with her fingers according to the list Ling Yunhe gave her. No matter how she counted, most of them were enemies. Yang Qingji's expression was still cold. It's already not bad. In the past few decades, your cultivation levels have improved greatly. With the 6 of us working together, unless 2 or more late-stage nascent soul cultivators join hands, the others won't be a problem. Yang Qingji appeared very confident. He believed that with his strength and the Heavenly Devil Tower, he could suppress ordinary middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. He knew the strength of Mo Tiange, Qin Shi and Jing Xingji. Back then, when Qin Shi and Jing Xingji joined hands, they could fight against late-stage nascent soul cultivators. Let alone now that Jing Xingji and Mo Tiange had advanced to the middle stage. As for Nie Wushang, although this was the first time they met after she formed her nascent soul, he knew how powerful the primordial devil great technique was. There was also Ling Yunhe. He was a genius disciple of Juyin sect, and he also had the soul-restricting bead. If he went all out, he wouldn't be much weaker than Mo Tiange. If they couldn't take the initiative among these nascent soul cultivators with such a lineup, how could they have the face to say they were better than ordinary cultivators? There's still us, Fei Fei said lazily on the side. Yang Qingji automatically ignored him. Xiaofeng was an 8th-ranked demonic beast cultivator with a noble bloodline, so she could be of help. Fei Fei hadn't even passed the transformation tribulation. When the time came, Mo Tiange had to put him into his spiritual beast bag. The few of them thought about it a few more times before they set out again. As before, Fei Fei transformed into his original form. While leading the way, he told them what he saw back then. There's nothing much to say about that sacrificial temple. However, the surrounding terrain is a bit special, so we might need to spend some effort. What terrain? Jing Xingji asked. Fei Fei didn't feel like explaining, so he said in a very bad tone. You'll know when we get there. Why are you talking so much nonsense? That tone made Jing Xingji's hands itch. You really don't know what a spiritual beast's duty is. As a spiritual beast, you have to talk to humans in a respectful and courteous tone, understand? Fei Fei paused for a moment, then directly lifted one of his hind legs and made a puppy shushing gesture to show his disdain. Upon seeing that, Jing Xingji shouted, You're acting like a hooligan? As a spiritual beast, you're actually acting like a hooligan towards humans? Not to mention that there's a woman here. There's even a mother beast here. Don't you feel embarrassed? Ahem. Xiaofeng cupped her hands and stood far away to show that it had nothing to do with her. Please, even if she was a female, she was a bird and Feifei was a beast. They were different races, alright? Besides, she could even be Feifei's grandmother. After walking for a while, Feifei suddenly stopped and sniffed with his nose. Then, he whimpered as if he was calling for something. Roar! Roar! As soon as his voice fell, other sounds rang out in the surroundings. Feifei whimpered again, and this sound also followed suit. The two beasts sang the same tune. Before long, the other side finally let down their guard. A huge figure drilled out of the stone forest step by step. This figure was terrifyingly huge. In front of it, the 6 of them were like little ants that could only raise their heads to look up. A 3-headed ape. Among the people present, 4 of them had seen this 3-headed ape with their own eyes in the past. 3 energies intertwined on its body, making it impervious to swords and spears and difficult to use magic to invade. Sure to. Feifei raised his head and shouted. The 3-headed ape stopped in front of them and stared at Feifei with his huge eyes for a while. Then, he stretched out his palm and placed it in front of Feifei. Feifei leaped up and was lifted onto the shoulder by the 3-headed ape. Oh! The 3-headed ape blinked its eyes and tilted its head to look at Feifei on its shoulder. Feifei had this kind of magical ability. No matter what kind of ferocious beast it was, it wouldn't be hostile to it. The two beasts rubbed each other's heads affectionately and conversed in the beast's language for a while before Feifei finally turned around. He said, "Let's go. Sure to take us there." The first time they came to Carefree Valley, it was Shirtu who took Feifei there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have discovered that a sacrificial temple was hidden here. As if it understood, Shirtu raised its head and shouted a few times, then led the group through the rubble. Only those who had been inside knew how chaotic the terrain of Carefree Valley was. Sometimes it was spiritual aura, sometimes it was devil aura, and sometimes it was filthy aura. Shirtu didn't care in the slightest. It was a monster born from the mixture of 3 auras, so no matter which aura it was, it wouldn't affect it. Moreover, these auras were nothing to a nascent soul cultivator. For a while they moved forward very fast. Before long, they drilled into a certain cave. The group of people walked through the pitch-black cave. Mo Tiange took out the heaven and earth fan and used the mother moonstone on the fan pendant to illuminate the cave. Soon, the scene in the cave began to change. Chunks of ice emerged from the soil. At first, they were only small fragments, but as they went deeper and deeper, more and more of them appeared until their surroundings were covered by ice walls. It was as if they had walked into a world of ice and snow. So beautiful. Little Feng couldn't help but praise as she looked at the sparkling icicles around them and the jade-like ice walls. After passing through one ice cave after another, they gradually heard the sound of running water, and a meandering stream slowly appeared under their feet. The stream grew bigger and bigger. In the end, they stood in front of a huge underground river. Listening to the sound of running water and watching the turbulent waves, the 6 people were a bit dumbfounded. There's a river here? In fact, there was nothing wrong with having a river. What was strange was that this river gathered 3 auras, among which the dead aura was the strongest. How do we go? Mo Tiange asked. With their cultivation levels, they could walk directly, but this would consume a lot of spiritual aura. Moreover, if they were careless and got entangled by the dead aura, it would be very troublesome. Roar! Roar! The 3-headed ape raised its head and roared. Feifei said, "Sure to carry us there." The 3-headed ape casually knocked a huge piece of floating ice from the ice wall and threw it into the river. The 6 people and 1 beast watched for a while. Feifei, who was crouching on the 3-headed ape's shoulder, said impatiently, "Let's go." After hesitating for a moment, everyone clenched their teeth and jumped onto the floating ice. The 3-headed ape pushed the floating ice and stepped into the river. Chapter 638. The situation of this underground river was more complicated than that of Carefree Valley. In Carefree Valley, the 3 auras were scattered. Even if they were mixed together, they were as distinct as the light of the 3 auras in the stone forest. However, The three auras in the river were mixed into a strange state, as if they had become something else. It was similar to the aura of death, but it was more complicated. It was dark and strange, making people's hair stand on end. Without Shirtu, the six of them could also cross the river, but they would inevitably be entangled by this strange aura. Now Shirtu was pushing the ice flow. If the three auras entangled them, they would be swept away first. The six of them, and one beast moved forward steadily. This river was wide and deep. From time to time, chilly wind blew in, making people's hair stand on end. Shirtu stepped on the water, making splashing sounds as he pushed the ice flow, sending them to the other side of the river. Before long, the ice flow reached the other side, and they came down from it. Shirtu also waded into the water and climbed ashore. His height and physique made him fearless of the strangeness of this place. The group moved forward again. After crossing the underground river, the ground was full of puddles of black water. They walked back and forth, as if they were walking on the riverbank. After walking for a while, Feifei suddenly said, "There are ghost cultivators in front of us. Get ready to fight." And Emotienga was stunned. "Ghost cultivators?" Feifei said. "This seems to be a mass grave with many corpses buried here." So ghost cultivators appeared. Probably because of the chaotic aura here. These ghost cultivators have no spiritual wisdom, and only focus on killing. Shirtu and I aren't affected, but you guys can't. As they spoke, they all felt the aura of ghost cultivators. No wonder this place is dominated by the aura of death. There are ghost cultivators here. How strong are they? Ling Yunha asked. He always paid attention to the most practical questions. 5th, 6th, 7th rank. Probably, Feifei said irresponsibly. The important thing isn't their strength, but their numbers. A lot. If they're not strong enough, it's useless no matter how many there are. Right? As they thought about this, the six of them were already standing in front of a fissure. After a long time, Emotienga finally said one word. "So many? I've told you many times already." Feifei was carefree as he sat on Stone's shoulder, wagging his tail. The sight of this made everyone's teeth itch. He couldn't see the end of the ravine in front of him, and the ravine was filled with ghost cultivators that were like walking corpses that floated around like ghosts. The strength of these ghost cultivators was evenly distributed, ranging from low level to high level. At first glance, there were at least dozens of them who were above the nascent soul realm. "Kill them," Emotienga said. "That's the only way." As soon as Qinshi finished speaking, a red sword light darted out of his sleeve, and instantly turned into a red light that enveloped him. Soon after, the red light flashed towards the other side of the river with lightning speed. After entering the range of the canyon, the ghostly cultivators who were swimming at the bottom of the river suddenly sprang up like cats that had smelled blood. The eyes of these ghost cultivators were dull, but their movements were agile. Regardless of their cultivation level, as long as they sensed Qin Shi, they would all rush towards him. For a moment, ghostly shadows danced chaotically and chilly winds blew. The three young real fire sword light moved forward with an indomitable will. All the ghosts that got close to it were killed by the vermilion bird's flames. Jing Xingji exclaimed, "This guy's strength has increased again. I have to work harder, or I still can't beat him." Emotienga shook her head. "Fellow Taoist Jing, you'd better think of a more practical goal." "You're looking down on me," Jing Xingji said with grief and indignation. "Not bad, I can tell." Emotienga smiled and waved her sleeves, turning into a white light and rushing towards the other side of the river. Her appearance made the ghost cultivators in the ravine chaotic. Some of them sensed her breath and changed their direction to float towards her. Some of them still stuck to Qin Shi, and some of them drifted left and right as if they didn't know what to do. Facing the ghost cultivators blocking her way, a sword appeared in front of Emotienga. However, this sword was simple and unadorned, and its breath was gentle. It was the Fuxing sword. She pointed her finger, and a golden thunderbolt darted out and quickly wrapped around the Fuxing sword. With a crackling sound, the golden thunderbolt was immediately absorbed by the Fuxing sword. The momentum of the Fuxing sword suddenly changed, and its killing intent soared. The Fuxing sword covered by the golden thunderbolt was invincible. As long as the ghost cultivators got close to it, they would be turned into ashes by the thunder of heavenly tribulation. The others were speechless. Jing Xingji widened his eyes and said, "Are you kidding me? Could it be that I can't win against Qin Shoujing? And now I can't even win against his wife? Get over it." Nie Wushang patted him on the shoulder. "Most things in life don't go your way." As she spoke, she turned into a black cloud and slowly floated away. Jing Xingji shouted from behind her, "Hey, what's with that sympathetic tone of yours?" No one answered him. After Nie Wushang, Ling Yunhe, Yang Qingji, and Little Feng all rushed to the other side of the river. Even the rocks swayed and floated forward. Jing Xingji had no choice but to swing his sword and also fly out. Nie Wushang's black cloud was completely different from Master Songfeng's. Master Songfeng's was ruthless and full of dark aura, while hers was very gentle but had a stronger corrosive ability. Any ghost cultivator who chased after her was surrounded by her black cloud and slowly corroded until nothing was left. It was the same primordial devil great technique, but Yang Qingji's situation was completely different. He waved the ghost-faced banner in his hand, and a surge of devil aura lingered around his body, sweeping away all the ghost cultivators who approached him. Meanwhile, an exquisite pagoda floated above his head, emitting a dark but powerful aura. Under this aura, even nascent soul ghost cultivators were suppressed to the point of being unable to move. Heavenly Devil Pagoda was worthy of being the top magic weapon left behind by the most powerful devil cultivator in Yunzhong's history, a figure who was revered as the Devil Venerable. Ling Yunhe followed closely behind. At this time and place, facing so many ghost cultivators, Ling Yunhe didn't dare to hold back his strength. The moonlight sprinkled down, and all the ghost cultivators within its range screamed and disappeared. Compared to Heavenly Devil Pagoda, the soul-restraining bead was much more restrained. After being summoned by Ling Yunhe, it just floated in front of him, releasing a warm and stable light. However, under this light, the dead aura didn't invade, making Ling Yunhe calm and composed. Behind Ling Yunhe, Little Feng let out a cry and showed her true form. Her whole body was burning with flames, and her long tail feathers were gorgeous and dazzling. All the ghost cultivators who approached her were burned to ashes by the vermilion bird flames on her body. Jing Xingji, who wasn't far away from her, exclaimed, "Divine Bird Phoenix? Could it be a fated chance obtained in the vermilion bird sacrificial temple? Qin Shoujing, this guy, how can he be so lucky?" The ghost cultivators swarmed over like a swarm of bees. In an instant, Jing Xingji's aura changed greatly. Countless light swords circled around him, and the sword lights flickered with threatening sharpness. The ghost cultivators came head-on, and the light swords rose from the ground and slashed at them with the force of 1,000 caddies. Chi. Compared to the imposing manner, the commotion was much smaller. The light sword slashed down these ghostly cultivators with ease and dexterity. Meanwhile, Stone and Feifei, who were far away from them, were extremely leisurely. No ghost cultivators came to find trouble with them. Stone was originally a monster with 3 chis intertwined, so he was like a fish in water in this place. Feifei, on the other hand, was blessed by nature. These ghost cultivators instinctively treated it as a harmless existence. The 6 people and 1 beast used all kinds of methods to kill their way into the canyon. For a moment, ghost shadows danced around, and the dead aura surged. Gradually, the low-level ghost cultivators were all killed, and only ghost cultivators of nascent soul and above were left. She didn't count them just now, but now that she took a look, the number of nascent soul ghost cultivators in this canyon actually reached more than 100. Emotinga couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when she thought about how the ghost city in Windy Sand City, in the far west, also had more than 100 ghost cultivators. Are ghost cultivators' nascent souls so worthless? Why do they have nascent souls so easily? Qin Shi, who wasn't far from her, said while fighting the ghost cultivators, "Why don't you take a look at how many there are, and how long they've been here? If human cultivators don't have a limited lifespan, there will be countless nascent souls." Emotinga couldn't help but nod when she heard what he said. On the path of human cultivators to the nascent soul realm, countless people had fallen in the middle, Whether it was aptitude, comprehension, temperament, fated chances, or luck, countless cultivators had fallen in front of every hurdle. In addition to all of these, there was also lifespan. Ghost cultivators and monster cultivators could use several times the time of human cultivators to make up for their shortcomings. But human cultivators had to be confined by their short lifespan. In other words, where there was gain, there was loss. Human cultivators had wisdom that monster cultivators couldn't reach in bodies, that ghost cultivators couldn't compare to. So it was difficult for them to break through the shackles of their lifespan. Although heaven favored human beings, it still maintained a balance within a certain limit. Moreover, for some reason, these ghost cultivators in front of them didn't retain their consciousness. Instead, they became corpse-like existences, which couldn't be compared to human cultivators at all. Their group had magic weapons and secret techniques, so each of them could fight against a group of people alone. Their path was blocked, and everyone was caught in a fight. They unanimously chose to move closer to the others. They weren't here to kill ghost cultivators, so it was proper for them to stick together and go straight to Qin Shi. Little Feng was the fastest. As Qin Shi's spiritual beast, her first priority was to get close to Qin Shi. Therefore, she took advantage of the time when the others were killing ghost cultivators and borrowed their fame to reach Qin Shi's side without much effort. "Master, come up," said Little Feng. Qin Shi had just killed 2 ghost cultivators, so he jumped onto Little Feng's back without much hesitation. Although he had strength to spare, flying in the air like this would waste a lot of spiritual aura to resist the attack of the dead aura. Little Feng was a bird, so flying was her instinct. It was much easier for her to carry him on her back. On Little Feng's back, Qin Shi's sword formation was activated again, forming a red sea. Little Feng cooperated with him and spat out the vermilion bird's flames, which burned the dead aura around them. "Tienga!" Qin Shi shouted and reached out his hand to her. Mo Tienga looked up and summoned the puppet. She gave the Fuxing sword to the puppet, took Qin Shi's hand, and got on Little Feng's back. The Fuxing sword also contained her golden lightning. Although the puppet didn't have spiritual intelligence, it was the easiest to command. Mo Tienga let it guard Little Feng and cooperate with Little Feng's vermilion bird's flames to release lightning from time to time. The ghost cultivators around them couldn't get close to them, so they didn't need to do anything. "You two are opportunistic," Jing Xingji accused them as everyone gathered. Which one of them didn't try their best to kill the enemy? The 2 of them, on the other hand, sat on the back of their spiritual beasts and let the spiritual beasts and the puppets kill each other. They didn't even need to do anything. "Fellow Taoist Jing," Mo Tienga waved the heaven and earth fan and said, "Wise men use their mouths, but fools use their fists. You have to accept your fate." Before Jing Xingji could speak, Nia Wushang, who was leaning towards them, narrowed her eyes. "You mean we're all fools?" Chapter 639. Half a day had passed by the time they crossed the canyon. Although the strength of these ghost cultivators wasn't great, they had the advantage in numbers. 10 or so ghost cultivators surrounded one, and even if they couldn't defeat the ghost cultivator, they would exhaust the ghost cultivator to death. Moreover, the surrounding was filled with dead aura, so they had to split their attention to resist it. Finally, everyone gathered together and crossed the canyon in one go. Then they rested on the spot. "Feifei, there's nothing behind us, right?" Feifei answered while combing the hair on Stone's head. "It seems. And we don't have to fight anymore. It's just a bit hard to walk." Complicated terrain? Nothing could be discussed if they didn't have to fight, so they didn't take it seriously. After resting for half a day, everyone recovered their spiritual aura and continued on their journey. Before long, they saw what Feifei said was a bit hard to walk. It was a huge karst cave, the top of which couldn't be seen. They entered the cave, made many turns, and went deep into the ground. Looking at the situation of this karst cave, it was as high as a small mountain. The problem with this karst cave wasn't its height, but the black water droplets that dripped or floated in the cave. These water droplets contained a strong aura similar to that of the underground river, but their corrosive intent was far stronger. "What's this?" Mo Tienga asked. Fei Fei spread her hands to show she didn't know. Anyway, we can't touch it. She separated a strand of sword light and touched a mass of black water. In an instant, with a chi sound, the sword light and the black water collided with each other. The black water dissipated, but the sword light wavered for a while before stabilizing. It's that powerful? Emotienga was taken aback. Shi's sword light contained the vermilion bird's breath. The destructive and evil-suppressing intent within it was the nemesis of ghosts and devils. Yet it was actually corroded by this ordinary black water. Ling Yunhe frowned. With a stroke of his finger, a piece of moonlight flew out of his sleeve and hit a floating drop of black water. This time, there wasn't even a sound. The moonlight and the drop of water disappeared at the same time. Jing Xingji didn't believe it, so he also drew his sword and slashed at a drop of black water. The black water was cut, but a trace of black aura remained on his sword. Jing Xingji's natal sword had long been refined into his sword nascent soul. However, he was a sword cultivator, after all, so he had to look cool. From venerable sword cultivator to Gujian sect's new disciples, all of them liked to carry a sword on their back outside. Jing Xingji was no exception. The sword on his back was the original body of the still water sword. At this time it was corroded by the black water, and even his sword chi had become impure. He felt great regret, and hurriedly forced the black chi out. Nie Wuxiang also made her move to test the water. Her black cloud lightly propped up the water, allowing the black water to drip on it, and then drip down again. You're alright? Emotienga was astonished. Nie Wuxiang said, You don't remember? When I entered the Carefree Valley, I was also contaminated by the aura of death, but it was later swallowed by the aura of primordial devil. Perhaps it's from the same source, so the aura of death doesn't have a strong corrosive effect on me. She called the black cloud back and pushed it in front of her. Look, there were still traces left on the black clouds, but compared to them, they were much fainter. What about fellow Taoist Yang? Emotienga turned towards Yang Qingji. You also cultivate the primordial devil art, so presumably you're the same, right? Yang Qingji also made his move to give it a try. Sure enough, although he couldn't compare to Nie Wuxiang, the black water's corrosive effect on him was also greatly reduced. Since you can maintain your strength, the matter of guarding will be left to you. Both Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji nodded in agreement. At present, it seemed that this part of the road might be more dangerous than the Ghost Cultivator's Canyon. These black water droplets either drifted or dripped down, and it was impossible to guard against them. If there was an accident, they might accidentally get contaminated by it. Let's go. Let's try it first. After waiting for so long, Fei Fei was a little impatient. Stone also barked twice. Then he lifted Fei Fei down and held her in his palm. Using his body to block the surrounding black water, he stepped into the cave. Emotienga shook her head and also followed them in. There were water stains everywhere on the ground, and there were water droplets flying everywhere. It was more than just a bit difficult, as Fei Fei said. They didn't need to fight on this part of the road, but it was more exhausting. Emotienga used the art of primordial singular energy, as well as that immortal robe, and carefully walked through it. These black water droplets didn't have any pattern at all. In this karst cave, they simply did whatever they wanted. They were either like ordinary water droplets, dripping from the top. They gathered into a pool on the ground and consciously expanded and shrank. They simply shuttled around the karst cave like naughty children. Or they collided, merged, and separated in the air. Emotienga was almost amazed. These water droplets seemed to have a life of their own. Some were cheerful, some were calm, some were fanatical, and some were melancholic. They formed their own world. If one looked at them carefully, they seemed to be integrated into their world, following their joys, sorrows, and joys. Emotienga felt a chill in her chest and suddenly woke up. She looked around and saw that the others were more or less immersed in it. Only Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji were a bit clear-headed. Be careful, she shouted. There's something strange here. Everyone's spirits were instantly shaken, as if they had just woken up from a dream. Ling Yan was shocked. What the hell is this? He was afraid the soul-restraining bead would be contaminated by the black water and corroded, so he put it away. But because he didn't have the soul-restraining bead to suppress his primordial spirit, these water droplets took advantage of his weakness and entered his primordial spirit. No one could answer this question. Feifei and Shirtu didn't have to worry at all, and had long disappeared. The 6 people and 1 beast roused their spirits, and each used their unique skills. They all knew that even if they were corroded by the black water, they couldn't let their minds be bewitched. Once they lost their minds, it was the same as handing over their lives. Lingyan took out the soul-restraining bead and said, "Come closer." The soul-restraining bead has the effect of calming one's mind. Upon hearing that, the others all moved closer to Lingyan. The soul-restraining bead floated in the air. Under Lingyan's control, it shone brightly illuminating everything within a radius of several hundred feet. With the soul-restraining bead suppressing them, their spirits were shaken. The 6 people moved forward slowly. They had to prevent their minds from being bewitched, and also guard against the black water's corrosion, so they walked extremely slowly. When they walked several hundred feet, the water droplets behind them suddenly merged drop by drop at an extremely fast speed, gathering into a large pool of black water on the ground. The black water walked along a strange curve, drawing a head, a body, and hands and feet on the ground. When the humanoid figure was finished, it suddenly struggled, broke free from the ground's restraint and stood up. This black person formed by the black water seemed to be wearing a tight black skin. He had no hair, no facial features, no nails, and no hair. He only had pitch black skin that flowed like water. He twisted his arms and legs, then adjusted his direction, and walked towards the people in front of him, not making a sound as he walked. These people were very careful, but his speed was too fast. In just a flash, he had already attacked them. "Watch out!" Nie Wushang shouted. A black cloud was waved out, blocking the black person's attack. Seeing this thing, the others sucked in a mouthful of cold air. They only felt that this black water seemed to have a life, but they didn't expect it to really have a life. This person, formed by the black water, didn't have the slightest pressure from head to toe. It only had the black water's own destructive and filthy aura. If it wasn't for the fact that Nie Wushang's strength hadn't dropped too much, they probably wouldn't have sensed this attack at all. In an instant, everyone took out their magic weapons. "Step back," Nie Wushang shouted. "Let me and fellow Taoist Yang handle it." This black water's corrosive effect on them was too strong. If they got close, they'd be splashed by a few drops, and their strength would also drop. This wasn't something that could be recovered by resting for a day or two. Without the slightest hesitation, Mo Tiange and the others retreated several steps. Yang Qingji also didn't hesitate. He waved his ghost face banner, and primordial devil aura quickly swept towards the black person. "Let's go," Qingji said. "This place is disadvantageous to us. Staying here will only drag them down." The 4 people and 1 beast moved forward quickly, using all kinds of methods without hesitation. As long as they didn't corrode themselves and their natal magic weapons, they didn't care about other magic weapons. Destroying treasures was always better than destroying people. On this side, although the person formed by the black water had a bit of spiritual intelligence, it was far inferior to a human being. After being repeatedly swept by Yang Qingji's ghost face banner, it immediately became flustered. Upon seeing this, Nie Wushang raised her fist, gathered primordial devil aura, and threw a punch. She was a martial cultivator, so her punch was full of power. With a single punch, the black person shattered, but it still turned into countless black water droplets and scattered in all directions. She and Yang Qingji stood for a while. The water droplets around them were still floating around, but all of a sudden, a figure finished gathering behind her and stood up. "Behind you," Yang Qingji shouted. With a wave of his ghost face banner, a streak of primordial devil aura shot towards the black person. Nie Wushang turned around and threw another punch, shattering the black person. "This won't do. We can't kill it," Yang Qingji said with furrowed brows. "Let's go." Nie Wushang nodded. Without hesitation, she followed behind him and ran forward. Not long after, they saw Mo Tiange and the others who had left earlier. They were surrounded by 3 to 5 black people. The 4 people and 1 beast were resisting while running away. Cut them off, Yang Qingji said. With a wave of his ghost face banner, a black person was quickly knocked down by him. Nie Wuxiang nodded and shouted, "You guys go!" The 4 people and 1 beast didn't stand on ceremony. After dealing with 2 black people, they left the rest to Emotienga and the others and quickly left. When they ran out of sight, Nie Wuxiang smashed a black person with a punch and said, "Thank you." Yang Qingji's gaze changed. "Thank me for what?" "Thank you for being willing to trust them." Nie Wuxiang looked at him and smiled. "Originally, we wouldn't have said anything if you went first." Yang Qingji took advantage of the moment he was facing the enemy to turn around. His pale face looked a bit unnatural, but his voice was cold and hard. "You're not the only one who might have friends." Nie Wuxiang was stunned. In the next second, the corners of her mouth curved up, and her voice also carried a bit of joy. "I talked too much. Sorry." The 2 of them no longer said anything. After dealing with these black people, they once again chased after the others. When they arrived, they still saw the same scene. They were surrounded by several black people, and their numbers were increasing. Everyone felt a bit powerless. They felt like they were punching cotton. These black people turned into water droplets with a single hit, and the water droplets turned into human beings after a while. As for them, they had cultivation levels and magic weapons, but because they were afraid of being corroded, they couldn't attack with all their strength. They could only run like this while Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji brought up the rear. Roar! Roar! A sound came from afar. Stone's silhouette slowly approached. Seeing that they were fighting with the black people, it was very surprised. Soon after, it stepped forward, pushed and threw a black person, smashing him into water droplets. It then pushed and threw them again. In a few breaths' time, all the black people were wiped out. The 6 people and 1 beast were a bit dumbfounded. Teaches. They were a group of nascent soul cultivators who were known as geniuses, as well as a divine beast with a noble bloodline. But they actually couldn't compare to a demonic beast that hadn't taken human form. Chapter 640. Led by Stone, they soon left the karst cave. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the familiar boulders on the ground. "There won't be any more problems, right?" Emotinga said, but she didn't move. "I don't think so." Feifei felt a little guilty. He was protected by Stone, so he didn't see the black water taking shape when he passed through the karst cave, so he thought there wouldn't be a fight. In the end, they were almost trapped inside, so he didn't have much confidence to say that. Emotinga didn't know what he was thinking, but she still cautiously released the puppet and went to test it. With a stiff expression, the puppet carried the Fuxing sword and walked step by step into the passage of the sacrificial temple. After walking for 300 to 500 feet, there was no movement. Everyone was finally relieved. Compared to other sacrificial temples, Black Tortoise's breath was much more restrained. Apart from the temple's heavy and simple style, it only vaguely revealed a sense of peace and vastness. Black Tortoise, water attribute, composition, born of extreme Yin, controlled all living things. Its body was a combination of a turtle and a snake, symbolizing continuous good fortune. Compared to the other 4 spirits, Azure Dragon symbolized tolerance and vitality, Vermilion Bird represented enthusiasm and vitality, White Tiger represented killing and violence, and Black Tortoise represented integration and good fortune. Its breath wasn't strong because water was everywhere in the world, but it hid in all things. Its breath also wasn't fierce because water's characteristic was to nourish all things. However, this Black Tortoise temple was different from other sacrificial temples. Its Black Tortoise's breath wasn't so pure. How could this be? Qingxi was the first to notice something was wrong. Although Emotienga, Jingxingji, and Feifei inherited the divine beast's breath, they couldn't use it as well as he did. He was the only one who completely integrated the Vermilion Bird's breath with his body, so he could feel the divine beast's breath more directly. The characteristic of the divine beast's breath was that it was superior to all breaths existing in the current cultivation world. So it was the purest. However, although Black Tortoise Temple was also vast and sacred, it seemed to have a trace of impurities. "What's wrong?" Jing Xingji asked blankly. Don't you think Black Tortoise's breath isn't pure? She cast a sidelong glance at him. They didn't have a deep friendship before, so he didn't think so. Now that Jing Xingji stopped pretending in front of him, she finally realized that this guy was smart. But he didn't like to use his brain in front of them. Now that he thought about it, for a person like Jing Xingji, how could he act like this if he didn't completely trust him? Thinking back, although he felt that Jing Xingji was a trustworthy person, he didn't like his behavior and manner. He didn't expect that after several hundred years, his cultivation level would rise higher and higher. Among his old friends, only Jing Xingji would reach Yuanying. Thinking up to this point, she calmed down a bit. Black Tortoise Temple is obviously different from other sacrificial temples. Although there was also a ghost city beside the White Tiger, there wasn't any ghost chi seeping out, so it wasn't affected. Although the vermilion bird had devil chi, it belonged to the prime devil stone steel. The vermilion bird's aura and prime devil chi didn't interfere with each other. As for the black tortoise, it's obvious that he's been affected by other auras. Why did this happen? Jing Xingji continued to ask. She paused for a moment, trying his best to smooth the blue veins on his forehead. However, his tone revealed his emotions. Please use your brain. I'm not your father. Everyone, Jing Xingji said. At our age, it'd be too difficult for you to be my father. You might be able to be my father-in-law. Everyone, stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Nia Wushang took the lead and stepped into the sacrificial temple. Mo Tiange followed closely behind her. When she passed by Jing Xingji, she stopped and looked him up and down like she was looking at her son-in-law. He looks okay, but he's a bit old. Jing Xingji grinned mischievously. Being old has its advantages. Mother-in-law, when will my fiancé be born? The Black Tortoise Temple was also made of neatly arranged boulders. But the color of the Black Tortoise Temple was darker and carried a cool aura. Moreover, this cool aura was mixed with a lot of indescribable auras. Mo Tiange wrinkled her brows. How long have these ghost cultivators been here? They've actually corroded the Black Tortoise's aura. At least, more than 100,000 years, right? Nia Wushang said. Carefree Valley is an ancient relic. So many corpses could only have been buried here before the collapse of the Middle Ages era. Ling Yunhe agreed. Correct. Carefree Valley was a paradise in the Middle Ages era. So I'm guessing it was either sealed during the Middle Ages era, or it was destroyed at the end of the Middle Ages era. So these people all died in the canyon. Over 100,000 years, countless corpses, and the dead aura gathered in the canyon, gradually turning it into a world of ghost cultivators. Due to the change of the world and the collapse of the space, the former paradise was polluted by the filthy aura. These ghost cultivators lost their spiritual intelligence and became zombie-like existences. The fusion of many auras turned into a new kind of aura, which gradually eroded the Black Tortoise Temple here. After a long time, the Black Tortoise Temple became what it was today. After walking through the wide stone path, they saw a heavy stone door engraved with black totems and densely packed ancient murals, looking solemn and distant. They pushed the stone door open, and a strong divine beast's aura rushed into their faces. They saw a tall and spacious hall with thick stone pillars, and a silent statue at the end of the hall. A black serpent was coiled on the huge turtle's back, looking down at them with indifferent eyes. Let's go out, Yang Qingji said in a low voice. Nia Wushang nodded. The divine beast's aura here is too strong. We'd better avoid it. Be careful. Mo Tiange looked back and said. Since Demon Lord Moon Shadow knows about the existence of the temple, he probably found his old friends in Starfall City, and could come here at any time. The two of them nodded and went out. When they turned around, they saw Ling Yunhe looking pensive. Mo Tiange asked, Fellow Taoist Ling, is there something wrong? Ling Yunhe said. That year Starfall City was uprooted by Demon Lord Night Frost. Almost no one escaped this disaster. How could fellow Taoist Tianqian and Demon Lord Moon Shadow run into survivors? Mo Tiange's expression was solemn. You mean, he said softly. I'm afraid this is Demon Lord Moon Shadow's trap. As soon as Ling Yunhe finished speaking, Mo Tiange felt something was wrong outside. She cultivated the soul-refining art, so her divine sense was very sharp. Soon, she found someone else had entered the temple. Qin Shi Jingxingji, and the others all looked serious. Xiaofeng also frowned. They knew Ling Yunhe's guess was probably right. They had Shirtu with them, but it was already so difficult for them to reach this place. Now someone else had come in such a short time. It was obvious they had been prepared for a long time. Let's get our things first and meet up with fellow Taoist Nye and fellow Taoist Yang, Qin Shi said. Everyone nodded. They quickly left the hall and went to the back. Mo Tiange took some time to send a sound-transmitting talisman to Nye Wushang, telling them to come quickly. While following behind Qin Shi, Mo Tiange said in a low voice, "Why did Devil Lord Yuing set up this trap?" Demon Lord Moon Shadow's actions could be said to have mobilized a lot of people. In addition to him, there were 3 nascent soul cultivators, 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators, and 20 or 30 early-stage cultivators. Among them, only Nye Wushang and Yang Qingji were devil cultivators, so they might have something he was interested in. If it was just for the 2 of them, why did he need to make such a big scene? Many people made things complicated. What if someone else took it? Hearing her words, Qin Shi said, "In my opinion, he just took advantage of the situation." "Oh, what do you mean?" Qin Shi said. "If we hadn't arrived in time, fellow Taoist Nye probably wouldn't have been able to escape. Why did he need to set a trap? I'm afraid Demon Lord Moon Shadow only used the fish in Starfall City to test whether she had the primordial devil great technique or not. As for the temple, he just mentioned it casually." Mo Tiange thought about it and nodded. Without the primordial devil stone tablet, the temple wasn't very valuable to devil cultivators. For Demon Lord Moon Shadow, it was only valuable to gain Nye Wushang's trust. She continued, "In the end we arrived. He couldn't defeat us and knew we were coming to the temple. So he simply spread the news and called a group of nascent soul cultivators to fight with us for the Black Tortoise. Then he dealt with Nye Wushang himself and snatched the primordial devil great technique. There's also Yang Qingji," Qin Shi added. If he confirmed that Nye Wushang practiced the primordial devil great technique, then there's no need to mention Yang Qingji. Their devil auras were similar. If he confirmed one, he could confirm the other. Mo Tiange was stunned and asked, "If that's the case, isn't it the same for him to snatch Yang Qingji?" "It's not the same." Qin Shi shook his head with a smile. Yang Qingji is Guifang Devil Lord's disciple, and the master of the Devil Venerable's holy object. Fellow Taoist Ling also said he easily defeated a middle-stage cultivator. Demon Lord Moon Shadow lost a refined corpse, so it's not easy to deal with him. Besides, other people might not know about fellow Taoist Yang's personality, but how could we not? He's watertight. I'm afraid it'll be hard for Demon Lord Moon Shadow to stop him. Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh when she recalled the dozens of years in the Immortal Palace in the returning ruined sea. Wasn't Yang Qingji guarding the primordial Devil Stone Cave, and not coming out to guard against them? Fellow Taoist Yang, because of his outstanding talent, had been a thorn in the side of his senior martial brothers and sisters since he was a child. His growth was a history of fighting against all kinds of conspiracies, so he was very experienced in dealing with this kind of situation. It was just that this time, the enemy was a bit stronger. However, Demon Lord Moon Shadow didn't expect that Wushang's master wasn't inferior to Guifang Devil Lord, and his experience was more complicated than Yang Qingji's. It wasn't easy to catch Wushang. Qin Shi smiled. Yes, otherwise he wouldn't have waited until we arrived. As they spoke, they went through the last stone door and saw a huge square. Mo Tiange had seen the Azure Dragon Sacrificial Temple. Inside it was a complete Azure Dragon skeleton. In the Vermilion Bird Sacrificial Temple, the Vermilion Bird's remains had been made into the Vermilion Bird Bow and enshrined in the Sacrificial Temple. The White Tiger Sacrificial Temple was different. The whole White Tiger was preserved intact, and its body belonged to Feifei. The White Tiger Pearl, which gathered the White Tiger's breath, recognized Jing Xingji as its master. Now in the square of this Black Tortoise Sacrificial Temple, there was a glowing blue pearl floating. The water inside the pearl was billowing, as if it contained the whole world. They couldn't be more familiar with this pearl. Aside from the difference in color and breadth, it looked exactly the same as the white tiger pearl. This is the black tortoise pearl? Jing Xingji said. It should be. Let's quickly subdue it, or it'll fall into someone else's hands. Right after they finished talking, Nie Wuxiang and Yang Qingji ran over. The two of them were devil cultivators, so they didn't dare to come close. They just stood at the door. Yang Qingji even summoned the heavenly devil tower and turned to face the stone path. Mo Tiange understood what they meant. They wanted to block the people behind them. Mo Tiange didn't have time to be moved. She summoned Xiaofan and said, "The black tortoise's attribute is water. I reckon you'll have to practice a water attribute cultivation technique to be able to trigger the black tortoise's breath and make it recognize you as its master. However, this is only my personal opinion. We can try it together." Ling Yunhe nodded. That's natural. The opportunity belongs to everyone. Jing Xingji said, I only have metal spiritual roots, so I probably won't be able to do it. Besides, I already have the white tiger's breath, so I won't fight with you guys. Right after he said that, he retreated and went to guard the door with Yang Qingji and Nie Wuxiang. Qin Shi also shook his head and said, I also don't have water spiritual roots. You guys can do it. There was no need to mention Xiaofeng. She was now a genuine descendant of a divine beast. So how could she possibly inherit another divine beast's breath? In the end, only Mo Tiange, Ling Yunhe and Xiaofan, who was released from the spiritual beast bracelet, remained. Fellow Taoist Ling, Mo Tiange said with a smile, I also have water spiritual roots, so I have to fight with you. Chapter 641. Yang Qingji guarded the main entrance. Nie Wuxiang stood silently on the side, and Jing Xingji and Qin Shi were a little further inside. The four of them stood in the most suitable positions, unsheathed their swords, and took out their magic weapons, ready to fight. With such a formation, even great cultivators in the late nascent soul stage couldn't easily enter. Mo Tiange, Ling Yunhe, and Xiaofan surrounded the black tortoise pearl, guarding Little Feng and the puppet not far away, and Stone hiding far away with Feifei on its back. Feifei was only at the 7th rank, and Stone hadn't transformed, so they'd better not get involved in this situation. Master, the water breath of the black tortoise pearl attracted Xiaofan. It looked at the black tortoise pearl, drooling. Can this be eaten? Mo Tiange raised her eyebrows. Do you want to eat it? Xiaofan drooled. It looks delicious. Mo Tiange smiled. Xiaofan was a sea dragon, but different from the azure dragon of the wood attribute. It was a spirit beast of the water attribute, so the breath of the black tortoise was very attractive to it. Fellow Taoist Ling, let's do it quickly, Mo Tiange said. Ling Yunhe took a step back. Fellow Taoist Mo, please go first. Mo Tiange didn't know whether he did this because he was grateful or for other reasons, but she didn't like to refuse, so she nodded and said, Then I won't be polite. Then, she operated the art of origin and grabbed the black tortoise pearl. The black tortoise pearl was successfully caught in Mo Tiange's hand and suddenly shone. Mo Tiange only felt a little dizzy. In an instant, she felt that countless things flowed through her mind, as if she had experienced time since ancient times, and she was drowned by the overwhelming water spiritual aura. After a long time, she suddenly woke up and looked down. The breath of the black tortoise wrapped around her whole arm. At this moment, it stopped, and the black tortoise pearl flew out of her hand uncontrollably, still floating in the air. Mo Tiange felt it was a pity. She had never practiced a water attribute cultivation technique, and only had the art of the origin, so she couldn't make it recognize her as its master, and could only borrow the breath of the black tortoise. It's coming. At the other end of the stone path, a figure appeared. Yang Qingji shouted in a low voice and pointed at the space between his eyebrows. The heavenly devil tower started to spin above his head, and the devil aura in the surroundings all rushed towards the heavenly devil tower. Even Nie Wuxiang was somewhat unable to control her own devil aura. Only after seeing this did they understand why Yang Qingji was able to easily defeat that mid-stage demonic cultivator. The heavenly demon tower could control the surrounding demonic qi, and any demonic cultivator would be affected. The person who came was Demon Lord Yuing. Accompanying him was Old Donkey Ma, the loose cultivator from Yunzhong. Demon Lord Moon Shadow was at the front, and Old Donkey Ma was riding his donkey upside down, following closely behind. His old face was still smiling like a chrysanthemum flower. Accompanied by the ding-ling-ling sounds, he slowly walked over. When the bell rang in their ears, everyone's mind was in a mess. They hurriedly guarded their minds. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord had just neared when he heard Yang Qingji shout. The Heavenly Demon Tower suddenly attacked the Moon Shadow Demon Lord. After that, Jing Xingji, thousands of sword lights, like a broken silver bottle, suddenly pierced out. Demon Lord Moon Shadow didn't slow down at all. He clenched his hands, and the demonic chi spread. The refined corpse rushed forward. There's no time. Emotinga turned her head and said, Fellow Taoist Ling, if you don't mind, my spiritual beast will try with you. What do you think? Ling Yunha nodded. Okay. Just now, when Emotinga easily grabbed the black tortoise pearl, his heart skipped a beat. He thought he missed the fated chance again, and he secretly regretted it. It wasn't until the black tortoise pearl automatically broke free that he heaved a sigh of relief. He secretly smiled bitterly. At first, he thought Emotinga didn't cultivate a water element technique, and he cultivated the Ice Palace's sect guarding technique, the ice and fire technique. So his chances of getting the black tortoise pearl to recognize him as its master were much higher. That was why he generously gave the opportunity to Emotinga. After this, he felt it was better not to pretend to be generous in the future. Xiaofan, Emotinga patted Xiaofan's head. If you want to eat it, then eat it. However, you have to compete with fellow Taoist Ling to see who the black tortoise pearl recognizes as its master. Oh. Xiaofan nodded obediently and happily rushed towards the black tortoise pearl. Emotinga said, Fellow Taoist Ling, please. Ling Yunha didn't stand on ceremony. He waved his sleeve, and countless moonlight fragments on it turned into clear light. Then, half of his body was covered in flames, and the other half was wrapped in mysterious ice. He reached out to the black tortoise pearl. This was Emotinga's first time seeing the ice and fire technique in full display. Thinking back to the vermilion bird sacrificial temple, it was completely different from today. Presumably, Ling Yunha's ice and fire technique hadn't reached the advanced level at that time. If the Sea of Returning Ruins appeared today, Ling Yunha would have formed his nascent soul, and it would be hard to say who the vermilion bird bow would belong to. Thinking of this, Emotinga felt a bit lucky. Fortunately, they caught up in time and got a spiritual communicating magic weapon for free. The black tortoise pearl stopped between Xiaofan and Ling Yunha. The mysterious ice formed by the ice and fire technique was clear and pure, and the water element spiritual aura on Xiaofan's body was incomparably abundant. Under the influence of these two, the black tortoise pearl suddenly burst into brilliance. Xiaofan and Ling Yunha were fighting for the black tortoise pearl at the entrance. Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji joined hands. The Heavenly Devil Tower suppressed Yuing Devil Master. The ghost face banner repelled the refined corpses, and thousands of sword lights pressed down like snow. Yuing Devil Master couldn't move an inch forward for a while. After being repelled, Yuing Devil Master's eyes flashed. He said, Fellow Taoist Ma, the divine beast's object is about to be taken away by them. Are you still going to stand by and watch? Old Donkey Ma, who was behind him, didn't answer. He just chuckled and patted the donkey he was riding. The donkey soared into the sky and leaped towards them, ignoring the sword lights as if they were nothing. This donkey only looked like a donkey, but it was actually a rare spiritual beast. Its 4 snow-white hooves drew marvelous trajectories in the air, and the surrounding space fluctuated strangely. Jing Xingji felt his eyes were blurred. The sword lights were clearly still there, but the donkey carrying Old Donkey Ma passed through his sword lights and leaped over the stone door. Qin Shi frowned. The sword formation he had prepared a long time ago came crashing down. Old Donkey Ma separated from his donkey. The donkey rolled and turned into a black-clothed boy. The black-clothed boy ignored Qin Shi and threw a string of bells at Nie Wushang. We haven't seen each other for many years. Fellow Taoist Qin's cultivation has improved again. Old Donkey Ma said with a smile. The new generation really surpasses the old. I didn't expect the younger generation to be so outstanding. Old guys like us will soon have nowhere to go. Although he said that, old Donkey Ma's movements weren't slow. He gently waved his whip, and countless wind blades appeared out of thin air, easily blocking Qin Shi's sword formation. Late nascent soul cultivators were indeed extraordinary. A thought flashed through Qin Shi's mind. With a wave of his sleeve, the vermilion bird's flames gushed out continuously, and once again formed a sword formation. We haven't seen each other for many years. Senior, you're still as elegant as ever. How could we juniors dare to compare with you? Qin Shi asked himself honestly. He believed he had the strength to compete with late nascent soul cultivators. But if it was a life-and-death battle, he would be slightly inferior. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to kill an enemy with a higher cultivation level. Early nascent soul cultivators might be fake, but late nascent soul cultivators were all genuine top cultivators in the human realm. Whether it was their means or temperament, they were all first class. Facing Qin Shi's sword formation, old Donkey Ma didn't seem to be in a difficult position. He swung his whip again, and flowers made of countless wind blades suddenly appeared in the air, slowly blooming. This flower appeared without a sound and was formless, but it was beautiful beyond compare. Every petal was formed by wind blades, and they spun rapidly, bringing with them a faintly discernible chill. Anything that approached would be silently shredded into pieces. It was truly a top-notch method to deal with a sinister person. The wind flowers collided with the sea of swords. The red sword lights emitted several puff, puff, puff sounds, like candlelight being gently blown out. Qin Shi's pupils shrank, and another sword light swam out from his sleeve. This sword light was inconspicuous, and no different from other sword lights. In fact, this sword light contained an extremely thick vermilion bird's breath. It was the main body of the three-yong real fire sword. Old Donkey Ma's wind flowers bloomed more and more. In just a flash, they covered half of the square, even affecting Nie Wushang. Xiaofeng, go help them. Seeing that, Mo Tiange waved her heaven and earth fan, and golden lightning shot out, weaving into a dense net of lightning, firmly protecting Xiaofan and Lingyan. At the same time, she controlled the puppet to move forward, and slashed at old Donkey Ma. Fuxing's sword was originally of the thunder attribute, and Mo Tiange attached the golden lightning tribulation to it, greatly increasing its power. Although it wasn't as good as the heavenly demon tower, it was still a rare top-grade flying sword. Although it had the cultivation level of the nascent soul realm, it couldn't compare to a real nascent soul cultivator. However, because of Fuxing's sword, it wasn't inferior to an ordinary nascent soul cultivator at all. With one slash, Fuxing's sword slashed out a thunderbolt. Even old Donkey Ma didn't dare to take it head-on and retreat it. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Qin Shi attacked with the sword formation, smashing most of the wind flowers. Taking advantage of his victory, he secretly hid the main body of the three-yong real fire sword. On the other side, Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji were fighting evenly with Demon Lord Yuying. Originally, Demon Lord Yuying's strength wasn't limited to this, but he was restrained by Yang Qingji's heavenly demon tower, so he couldn't display his full strength. Jing Xingji was a sword cultivator, so he actually suppressed Demon Lord Yuying to the point that he couldn't use his divine power. While their fight was in full swing, Mo Tiange keenly sensed that someone else had entered the sacrificial temple. She turned around and saw that Xiaofan and Ling Yunhe were still engrossed in subduing the pearl of black tortoise. As if it was stimulated by their breaths, the pearl of black tortoise shone brightly, but it still floated steadily in the air, unable to be subdued by them. Mo Tiange's heart sank. It's been so long, but the pearl of black tortoise still hasn't been subdued. Could it be that the two of us aren't strong enough to make it recognize us as its master? After taking a closer look, she was somewhat stunned. This pearl of black tortoise indeed hadn't been subdued by them, but it wasn't like her. She couldn't sense it. Instead, it was moving left and right. The glowing blue ball of light spun rapidly. Sometimes it moved towards Ling Yunhe, and sometimes it moved towards Xiaofan, as if it was being pulled here and there by them. Could it be that both of them can subdue the pearl of black tortoise? As soon as this thought emerged, Emotienga became nervous. If they couldn't subdue it, it would be fine. But if they could subdue it, it would be too much of a pity if they couldn't. As time slowly passed, the pearl of black tortoise slowly floated towards Ling Yunhe. This time Xiaofan couldn't pull it back. Emotienga sighed and put away her regret. Never mind, at least it's Ling Yunhe's and not someone else's. But it's a pity for Xiaofan. If he could swallow the pearl of black tortoise, maybe he could advance in one go and break through the transformation realm. Just as she was thinking about this, Xiaofan might have become anxious. It opened its big mouth and bit it. Of course, it couldn't really bite the pearl of black tortoise. That wouldn't be competing but robbing. Xiaofan was only releasing its water spiritual aura. Its action was effective. The pearl of black tortoise suddenly stopped and was pulled into an oval shape. Then, under the three people's astonished gazes, it slowly separated into two and flew into Xiaofan's mouth and Ling Yunhe's hand respectively. Emotienga was stunned for a moment. She muttered to herself, "This also works." Chapter 642. Xiaofan swallowed the black tortoise pearl and smacked her lips with satisfaction. Delicious. Unfortunately, I didn't taste it. How could it be delicious if it didn't taste it? Emotienga knocked its head and said, "Take your time to taste the spirit beast bracelet." Then she pulled it back. Emotienga turned around and asked, "Feifei, what about you?" Feifei held the stone and mumbled for a while before saying, "Let's go in." Emotienga nodded and waited for them to run over. She then pulled them into the spirit beast bracelet. The spirit beast bracelet could store 10 spiritual beasts. Right now, Xiaofeng, Xiaofan, Feifei, and even the stone only had 4. Figures appeared again at the end of the stone path. There were 7 or 8 nascent soul cultivators. Emotienga saw Devil Monarch Night Frost, Venerable Xuxiang, Jiewu, and Han Shizhi. Ling Yan imitated Xiaofan and swallowed half of the black tortoise pearl. Then with a wave of its sleeve, moonlight essence flew out. Emotienga also moved. With a wave of her heaven and earth fan, the thunder net turned back into a ball of golden lightning and flew back into the heaven and earth fan. Then with another wave, it turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards Old Donkey Ma. Old Donkey Ma quickly retreated. A huge wind flower suddenly appeared, its blooming petals colliding with the golden lightning. "Isn't this little friend Emo?" Old Donkey Ma smiled. Emotienga looked at the dreamy wind flower around her, and then at Old Donkey Ma's dried chrysanthemum face. She had a strange feeling. She said, "Senior Ma, it's been many years. How have you been?" Hee hee. Old Donkey Ma's chrysanthemum face narrowed so much that his eyes couldn't be seen. "How can I compare to you? I've never heard of you advancing from the core formation realm to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm in 50 years. As soon as he finished speaking, a wind flower suddenly appeared where she stood. With a crackling sound, the lightning net fell down. Emotienga's figure dissipated into nothingness, and her real body appeared 10 feet away. Meanwhile, a lightning net wrapped the Feng Hua in her original spot, unexpectedly annihilating the Feng Hua. The smile on Old Donkey Ma's face disappeared. It seemed easy, but in fact, this wind flower was the foundation of the secret technique. Just now, he secretly decided to capture Emotienga in one fell swoop. First, half of his black tortoise pearl had been swallowed by her spiritual beast. Second, if she was seriously injured, she would definitely be flustered. He never expected that she would actually dodge his attack so easily. What kind of opportunity did this junior encounter in the Immortal Palace? She had only formed her nascent soul for a little more than 50 years, yet she could actually compete with him, a great cultivator who had accumulated many years. Before he had the time to think, the sword formation came crashing down again. He waved his whip, and just like before, the wind flowers bloomed, forcing the sword formation away. Unexpectedly, an inconspicuous sword light suddenly burst out, broke through his wind flower, and pierced towards him at lightning speed. With a soft chi sound, Old Donkey Ma looked down and saw a bloody hole in his chest. The wound made a sizzling sound. Qin Shi's 3-yang real fire sword found the most suitable opportunity to penetrate his body, and the vermilion bird's flame took this opportunity to invade his body. Old Donkey Ma threw his whip. This inconspicuous thin whip paused in the air and swung on its own. Every time it swung, the air became stagnant. After 3 or 4 swings, Emotinga and Qin she felt the air became obscure. Whether it was the heaven and earth fan, or the 3 young real fire sword, they all stopped there and couldn't be swung out. The gourd on old Donkey Ma's back flew up and fell into his hand. He pulled out the cork and drank a mouthful. In an instant, the wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to his body and disappeared quickly. Physical injuries weren't that serious for nascent soul cultivators, but he was actually able to expel the vermilion bird's flame so easily. It wasn't simple. She really didn't know what kind of spiritual medicine was in this gourd that could even expel the vermilion bird's flame. After 5 swings, the thin whip stopped, and old Donkey Ma's injuries were also healed. Qin she gave her a meaningful look and Emotinga nodded. With a wave of the heaven and earth fan, an azure dragon soared and let out a roar. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of golden lightning. The golden lightning quickly spread out and enveloped old Donkey Ma. Right after that, the wind flower bloomed, but the azure dragon didn't disappear. Instead it curled towards old Donkey Ma. Old Donkey Ma turned pale with fright. When he saw the azure dragon, he thought it was just an image of a secret technique, so he didn't take it seriously. Unexpectedly, after the astonishing power of the golden lightning, the overwhelming azure dragon's breath surged towards him. Only then did he realize this wasn't as simple as a secret technique. These azure dragon's breaths were vast and sacred, seeming to contain endless vitality. Their powerful might almost made it difficult for him, a great late-stage nascent soul cultivator, to withstand them. Old Donkey Ma secretly clenched his teeth. These 2 juniors must have guessed that the magic weapon that could freeze space couldn't be used frequently, so they immediately attacked him after he used the petrifying whip. Just as they guessed, he had to rest for several months after using the petrifying whip once. Just now, he accidentally fell into their trap and had to use the petrifying whip in advance. So he was in such a passive position now. Thoughts flashed through old Donkey Ma's mind, and he took out a glittering talisman. He drew a few strokes in the air with his fingers and lightly touched the talisman. The talisman suddenly burst out a dazzling golden light and turned into an incomparably mysterious rune. Seeing this, Emotinga's figure flashed, and she used instant movement. The jade bone puppet took a step forward, and the supporting life sword flashed with lightning as it slashed down with an indomitable posture. Ling Yunha, who had been watching from the side, also saw this opportunity and took out the soul-restraining pearl. At this time, another powerful aura appeared, containing destruction and heat. Old Donkey Ma shifted his gaze and saw Qin, she pulling a simple longbow burning with raging flames. He was instantly shocked. He was an individual cultivator, so he was the most cunning in fights of magical powers. Just now, when Emotinga attacked repeatedly, he knew she was deliberately restraining him, so that Qin she could attack her. He also secretly prepared a backup plan, planning to beat her at her own game and counterattack. However, as soon as the vermilion bird bow appeared, he knew his backup plan couldn't stop it. He made a prompt decision and whistled. The black-clothed boy who was fighting with Nie Wushang rolled on the ground, revealed his true form, and ran away with old Donkey Ma on his back. Speaking of which, this donkey was really amazing. His 4 hooves seemed to have the ability to distort space. It was precisely because of this magic that Nie Wushang couldn't defeat him even after a long time, even though she was completely suppressing him. At this time, old Donkey Ma and the donkey, with the help of the donkey's 4 hooves, once again broke through the blockade of Jing Xingji's sword light, rushed out of the stone path, and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Old Donkey Ma, Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, was furious. He knew this old guy couldn't be relied on. Once there was danger, he ran faster than anyone else. Now that he was left here alone, was he supposed to let him take another arrow? Demon Monarch Moon Shadow glared at Nie Wushang ferociously, then flung his cloak. The cloak left his body and turned into crows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, rushing towards Jing Xingji and Yang Qingji. As for Demon Monarch Moon Shadow, he took advantage of this opportunity to escape with his refined corpse. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, that's it? Jing Xingji mumbled. Qin Shi put away the vermilion bird bow. If I don't do this, what else do you want? Seeing that more people were coming, he knew old Donkey Ma wasn't someone who would take risks easily, so he deliberately used the vermilion bird bow to scare him. Sure enough, old Donkey Ma was scared away. Demon Monarch Moon Shadow was alone. He couldn't defeat them, so he could only run away with them. In fact, this time, they were able to beat the two late nascent soul cultivators so smoothly because they had the advantage of the terrain. Yang Qingji and Jing Xingji were blocking the entrance, so Demon Monarch Moon Shadow couldn't enter. The two late nascent soul cultivators couldn't join hands, so they had no way to defeat them one by one. Even now, Emotinga still felt that it was a close call. If old Donkey Ma wasn't timid and fought to the death with the two late nascent soul cultivators, it would be hard to say what would have happened. However, now that Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma ran away, other people came. Emotinga sighed. There were so many people. How many fights would they have to fight? She took out a restorative panacea and stuffed it into her mouth. She also conveniently replaced the crystal jades on the puppets. Just as she finished, those people arrived. As soon as these nascent soul cultivators arrived, they saw Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma joining hands and fighting with them. Just as they had their own thoughts, either to help one side or to watch from the sidelines. Who knew that old Donkey Ma and the others would be scared away after taking only a few steps? This time, everyone's thoughts changed again. Even Demon Monarch Moon Shadow and old Donkey Ma couldn't defeat them. Were these people really that strong? Who should they join hands with? Or should they just give up? Just as they were thinking, old Donkey Ma suddenly turned his head and shouted, "Everyone, they've already taken Black Tortoise's relic. Do as you see fit." After he finished speaking, he rode his donkey and disappeared. Old Donkey Ma's shout made all the nascent soul cultivators' eyes brighten. Emotinga smiled bitterly. Old Donkey Ma, this old guy. Even after he ran away, he still caused trouble for them. Everyone. Qin Shi took a step forward and looked at them seriously. I won't hide it from you. Black Tortoise has already recognized its master. You're too late. Old Donkey Ma already said it. It was useless to deny it now, so Qin Shi simply told them the truth. They had already shown their strength. Even two late-stage nascent soul cultivators joining hands couldn't do anything to them. How could these scattered cultivators snatch Black Tortoise from them? It was better to threaten them with words. Sure enough, the cultivators hesitated. After a while, Nan Guitian suddenly smiled and asked, "May I ask, who is the master of Black Tortoise's relic?" Under their burning gazes, Ling Yunhe pursed his lips and took a few steps forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, I'm the master of Black Tortoise." Once he finished speaking, everyone's gaze fell on him. Nan Guitian narrowed his eyes. "It's fellow Taoist Ling." Emotinga was dumbfounded. Ling Yunhe actually took everything on himself and didn't drag her into this. In fact, he could have said the other half was on her spiritual beast Xiaofan. With Juyan Sek's foundation in Yunzhong, these cultivators would definitely focus on her, and he would be able to escape smoothly. But now, Ling Yunhe said Black Tortoise recognized him as its master. These cultivators would inevitably be restrained because of Juyan's sect. Should they snatch it or not? If they snatched it, they would offend Juyan's sect. Moreover, these people were so strong. Whether they could snatch it or not was still a problem. If they didn't snatch it, would they just watch the treasure fly away in front of them? This wasn't the right attitude for cultivation. While everyone was struggling, they suddenly heard a chuckle. They turned around and saw that it was Han Shizhi. After advancing to the nascent soul realm, Han Shizhi's appearance didn't change much. The gloominess that often haunted his eyes was gone. Instead, he seemed more modest and refined. In fact, everyone in Yunzhong knew that arrogance was Han Shizhi's true nature. At that moment, Han Shizhi said unhurriedly, "When the treasure is in front of you, you'll have to rely on your own abilities. Isn't this the rule of the cultivation world? When did everyone become so courteous?" Chapter 643. When Han Shizhi finished speaking, A few of them fixed their eyes on him with a hint of viciousness. That's right, this was the rule of the cultivation world. Juyan's sect had been the #1 sect in Yunzhong for tens of thousands of years. Did the other cultivators not fight with them in these tens of thousands of years? Of course not. Stealing treasures was one thing, but making enemies was a personal grudge. The sects never cared too much about it. Even if they took 10,000 steps back, and Juyan's sect really targeted them, they could just avoid them. If they really pressed forward and cut off their path of survival, the cultivators of Yunzhong would gang up on them. Beside him, Zhu Wu was a little hesitant. He said, "But the treasure has already recognized its master. How can we steal it?" Han Shizhi glanced at him. He really didn't like Zhu Wu's gentle and weak personality. He said, "Master. If it doesn't have a master, wouldn't it be fine?" When he finished speaking, his gaze on Ling Yunhe became even more malicious. Ling Yunhe stopped smiling and his expression darkened. Moonlight essence turned into a jade knife again, and he held it in his hand. "If you want to fight, then don't waste your breath." "Hee Ling boy, I like your personality." Supremacy Void Aspect shouted and stepped forward with his staff. Come. I won't bully you. Come at me together." Before Ling Yunhe could move, Demon Lord Night Frost, who had his arms crossed, snickered. "I say, monk, don't you think too highly of yourself? Didn't you see that old zombie and old donkey ma run away?" "Heh," Supremacy Void Aspect immediately said. "Then why don't you come with me? If we take care of these juniors, let's see if old you and old donkey ma still dare to be arrogant in front of us in the future." "They've never dared to be arrogant in front of me," Yi Shuang said lightly. She glanced at Han Shizhi. "Besides, as a late-stage nascent cultivator, there's no reason for me to be the vanguard for juniors." Hearing this, Supremacy Void Aspect touched his head and smacked his lips. "Old Yi, why do I feel like there's something wrong with what you said?" Demon Monarch Night Frost raised the corner of his lips, a flash of helplessness on his cold face. "Monk, it's not easy for you to cultivate to the late stage." Venerable Void Phase nodded seriously. "Of course, but you've said it many times already. But every time I see you, I can't help but say it." Night Frost Demon Monarch sighed. "Forget it. If you want to fight, fight. Don't call me. What a pity." Supremacy Void Aspect muttered. He thought for a moment before asking, "Old Yi, are you not interested? Or are you just waiting to reap the benefits?" Night Frost Demon Lord could not help but knock her forehead. She leaned against the stone wall and said, "What divine beast inheritance? It's useless to us demonic cultivators. Why should I join in the fun?" Then you, having been asked too many questions, Night Frost Demon Monarch glanced at him coldly. "Can I just watch?" Yes. Venerable Void Phase nodded repeatedly. His temper was a little explosive, but he knew who he could and could not afford to offend. He turned his attention to Ling Yunhe and the others. "Juniors come." Mo Tiange looked at Demon Monarch Night Frost, and happened to meet her eyes. She nodded with a smile. The corners of Demon Monarch Night Frost's mouth curved slightly, looking like she was smiling. "You're still not coming?" After waiting for a long time, and seeing that they didn't make a move, Venerable Void Phase couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing? Are you afraid?" Ling Yunhe sighed and asked, "Senior Void Phase, do you really want to snatch the treasure or join in the fun?" "I want to join in the fun, and I want to snatch the treasure," Venerable Void Phase said firmly. Ling Yunhe's expression turned solemn. "Then Junior won't be polite." Right after he finished speaking, his crescent moon jade knife suddenly moved like lightning. At the same time he retreated. The soul-confining bead floating above his head suddenly shone brightly. Venerable Void Phase didn't move. He clasped his palms together, and a golden light burst out from them. Instantly, the image of a benevolent Buddha with his palms also clasped together appeared and merged with him. Wisdom King Physique. Ling Yunhe narrowed his eyes and waved his sleeves, withdrawing the moonlight. However, the soul-confining bead above his head became even brighter. Wisdom King Physique was a commonly used Buddhist defensive technique. Almost every Buddhist disciple knew it, but only a few of them could cultivate it to the top level. At Venerable Void Phase's level, ordinary techniques wouldn't be able to harm him unless they were Wisdom King Physique. Therefore, Ling Yunha simply withdrew his magic weapon and used the soul-confining bead to attack with his powerful divine comprehension. Hey, this is really a treasure. Venerable Void Phase's eyes lit up when he saw the soul-confining bead, but he said, if old man Yuanmu used it, this monk really wouldn't be able to block it. What a pity. Before he could finish speaking, a sword ray flickering with golden lightning slashed down. With a ripping sound, it tore a hole in the Buddhist light. Venerable Void Phase turned around and saw Imotinga smiling at him. Senior Void Phase, what's a pity? Venerable Void Phase originally thought it was a pity that Ling Yunha's cultivation level wasn't high enough, but he didn't expect these people would actually help him. Imotinga's attack was like poking a hornet's nest. Nanguitian and Taoist Rui signaled each other with their eyes and attacked together. Nanguitian flicked his right hand, and a coin flew high up. It suddenly enlarged and flew towards Ling Yunha. 5 small flags of different colors appeared in front of Taoist Rui. They were arranged in a strange way. He waved them lightly, and the 5 flags began to rotate at different speeds. The spiritual aura in the surroundings also began to fluctuate. Clang! Nanguitian's coin was hit by Jing Xingji's sword ray. The others were also ready to attack. There was a late nascent soul cultivator, and 2 middle nascent soul cultivators. Other cultivators might also take this opportunity to attack, so now wasn't the time to hold back. Imotinga's gaze fell on Taoist Rui. She knew how terrifying a nascent soul formation master, who could arrange formations on the spot and affect the movement of spiritual aura in the surroundings was. If it wasn't for Tian Jiqian, Ling Yunfei would never have dared to set up a killing trap against Ling Yunha. Senior martial brother, she called out. Qingxi knew what she wanted to say, so his 3 young real fire sword went straight towards Taoist Rui. At that moment, the nascent soul cultivators swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Everyone understood that this was their best time to fish in troubled waters. They might become the winners. With their strength, they didn't have the qualifications to watch with folded arms. There were only 2 people who didn't move, Demon Monarch Night Frost and Ju Wu. Demon Monarch Night Frost leaned against the stone wall with her arms crossed. Her gaze was indifferent as she watched the chaotic battle in front of her. She had no intention of getting involved at all. Her eyes flickered, and she looked at Ju Wu. Aren't you going to fight? Ju Wu hesitated for a long time. In the end, he sighed and shook his head. Martial uncle just told me to come and take a look at the situation. He didn't say I wanted to snatch the treasure. Since the treasure has already recognized me as its master, I still want to fight. Isn't my killing intent too heavy? It's a hindrance to my cultivation. Demon Monarch Night Frost raised the corner of her mouth, revealing a rare smile. I thought you were old friends with them, so you didn't want to fight. Ju Wu scratched his bald head in embarrassment. That's indeed the reason. Fellow Taoist Emma once gave me a way out. I don't want to, Demon Monarch Night Frost sighed. If you don't want to fight, you'd better go back early. Needless to say, Yuan and old Donkey Ma won't let this matter rest. Ju Wu was stunned. Senior, didn't they run away? They're just waiting to reap the benefits, Demon Monarch Night Frost said faintly. When both sides are injured, they'll show up. Ah, Ju Wu was startled. She looked at Demon Monarch Night Frost cautiously. What about Senior? Demon Monarch Night Frost shook his head. I never lie. If I'm not interested, I'm not interested. As he spoke, he leaned against the stone wall, closed his eyes, and stopped moving as if he was resting. Ju Wu hesitated for a while, but in the end he sighed. Forget it. I'd better go back and report to Martial Uncle. As he spoke, he walked away. Aside from Ju Wu, the others didn't have this kind of awareness. All the cultivators who entered the sacrificial temple rushed here in waves, throwing themselves into the front line to fight for the treasure. Unfortunately, the passage was too narrow and couldn't accommodate more than 20 nascent soul cultivators fighting. As a result, Imotinga's group took advantage of the terrain and guarded the entrance. No matter how many people there were, only 2 or 3 of them could fight. Imotinga's group didn't have many people, but they were strong. Qin Shi, Jing Xingji and Yang Qingji stood on the front line, their defense unbreakable. At first, These people were full of enthusiasm. But as time passed and they couldn't win, they gradually had other ideas. There were more than 20 of them, but there were only 2 or 3 people facing them. If they rushed to the front, wouldn't they be working for others? If they were injured, they'd be lucky if others didn't take the opportunity to rob them, not to mention that they couldn't win. These people were strong. Just now, Taoist Rui was almost killed by their joint attack. And he was a middle-stage cultivator, who had been famous for many years. Gradually the attack slowed down. No one wanted to be the vanguard, and let others take advantage of them. In the end, they even shifted the blame to each other, and stopped attacking. Brother Taoist Rui. Nan Guotian sent a voice transmission to Taoist Rui, signaling him with his eyes. Taoist Rui understood. He moved far away from the crowd and hid behind them. He was injured by Qin Shi and Imotienga's joint attack just now. Now that everyone was slacking off, his behavior was normal, so no one paid much attention to him. Brother Nan, we can't go on like this. What do you think we should do? Nan Guotian rubbed his fat belly, then glanced outside and said, when that old monk Su Xiang attacked earlier, I thought we might be able to take advantage of the situation. I didn't think that these juniors would grow so quickly in just a few decades. Not only did we fail, but they even injured you, Taoist Rui. He cupped his fist at Taoist Rui apologetically. Taoist Rui waved his hand. We've been friends for several hundred years. Why do we have to do this? The problem now is whether we can snatch it or not. The 2 of them stared at the scene in front of them in silence. If all of them attacked together, these juniors wouldn't be able to stop them no matter how fast they grew. After all, there were more than 20 nascent soul cultivators here. Many of them were in the middle stage, and there was also Venerable Xuxiang, a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. On the other hand, Imotienga's group only had 3 in the middle stage, 3 in the early stage, an 8th-ranked demonic beast, and an early-stage puppet. But how could they possibly join hands without any ill feelings? Everyone wanted to fish in troubled waters, so no one was willing to risk their lives, including the 2 of them. In my opinion, we'd better retreat for the time being, Nan Guotian said all of a sudden. Brother Nan. Taoist Rui was a bit surprised. Nan Guotian's oily face had a shrewd glint in his small eyes. He looked at the end of the passage and said, I don't know where old Donkey Ma ran off to. Taoist Rui was stunned for a moment, but he soon nodded. I'll listen to Brother Nan. Old Donkey Ma was the most cunning among nascent soul cultivators. There was obviously still hope, so how could he really leave? Rather than letting him reap the benefits, it was better to leave for the time being, and see what he was up to. Chapter 644. Imotienga dusted her clothes then sat down. They were in a deadlock at the entrance. These people were not stupid. They fought for a while at the beginning, but after realizing that they were powerful, they stopped taking risks. She also knew that this was only a temporary measure. It could not continue like this forever. Firstly, they wouldn't be able to escape if they dragged this on. Secondly, if they dragged this on for too long, if they came up with a plan, they would have to take action. Even if they didn't come up with a plan, what if reinforcements arrived? This place wasn't the celestial pole. Not only were there many late nascent soul cultivators here, but they also had nothing to do with it. Nie Wushang sat down next to her and said, Did you notice that a group of people who should be here didn't come? Imotienga took some time to think. Are you talking about people from Juyin sect? Yes. Nie Wushang's gaze swept over the nascent soul cultivators on the stone path. Ling Yunhe claimed that the black tortoise's relic recognized him as its master. Juyin sect also clearly sent people here. So why didn't they come to help? Imotienga also looked at these nascent soul cultivators. Sure enough, there weren't any people from Juyin sect among them. What do you think? She asked. Nie Wushang shook her head. I don't understand what Juyin sect thinks of Ling Yunhe. Isn't he the master of the relic left behind by the Guasian sect? Logically speaking, he should be the successor that the sect has nurtured with all its resources. But Juyin sect seems to be very afraid of him, Imotienga said. Comparing herself to Juyin sect's attitude towards Ling Yunhe, she knew what was wrong. Ever since Ling Yunhe went alone to look for her to save Nie Wushang, he didn't seem to have the slightest intention of reporting it to the sect. Then came Carefree Valley, where he met Senior Marshal Brother Yuan, and lamented that Juyin sect no longer trusted him. But now, he was trapped here, and the Juyin sect actually did not come to help him. Nie Wushang went through the matter in her heart and asked, could it be that Moon Shadow Devil Lord, an old donkey ma trapped the people from Juyin sect temporarily? Mo Tiange was stunned for a moment, but soon after, she nodded and said, that's possible. How could other people not know what they knew? Indeed, the others knew that these nascent soul cultivators were currently anxious. They had originally thought that the people from the Juyin sect were behind them, so they wanted to snatch it before they arrived. However, they had wasted an entire day here. Almost everyone else had arrived, but the people from the Juyin sect had yet to arrive. This was strange. On one side was the treasure that they had yet to get their hands on, and on the other side was the Juyin sect that had arrived at some point in time. Apart from Nan Guitian and Taoist Ru Yi, who had withdrawn early, Master Void Phase who had run away impatiently, and Demon Lord Night Frost, who had no intention of getting his hands on the treasure, everyone else was on tenterhooks. They were even more reluctant to approach and get beaten up. Was he really going to let the Juyin sect take advantage of him? That was what everyone was thinking. They were extremely unwilling, but they couldn't think of any good ideas. Han Shizhi's eyes flickered and he suddenly said, everyone, if we continue to delay like this, we might as well go back as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone turned to look at him. Han Shizhi's expression was indifferent. The Juyin sect is not far from here. As soon as he finished speaking, someone sneered. You know? Do you think we don't? Han Shizhi wasn't angry. His lips curled into a mocking smile. So what if you know? Are you going to sit here and wait? The mockery in his tone was too obvious, and he had always offended many people. As soon as he finished speaking, someone sneered. What's wrong, Teacher Han? Are you plotting against someone else again? Han Shizhi wasn't angry at all. There are so many people here. My cultivation level isn't worth mentioning, and the situation is clear. You can only blame yourselves for being stupid, if I can still plot against you. His words were very harsh, and many people were instantly enraged. Han Shizhi pretended not to see it and said, the Juyin sect can ask for reinforcements, but can't you do the same? This has always been the case when major sects fight for resources. As soon as he said this, most people calmed down and fell into deep thought. That was right. Sects had an unwritten rule when it came to fighting for treasures. Even if they became enemies, they wouldn't easily start a dispute. After all, each sect had the most low-level disciples. If they really fell out with each other, what would happen if a few high-level cultivators from the other sect killed all the low-level disciples? Moreover, although the Juyin sect had the advantage in the number of nascent soul cultivators, the other sects also had a lot of nascent soul cultivators. It was just that they were unlucky and didn't have many nascent soul cultivators. For example, the Dawning Pill sect had been doing well for the past few years. They currently had 6 nascent soul cultivators, and the Jingshu sect had more, reaching 8. They also had a nascent soul cultivator. If 2 or 3 sects like this joined forces, they wouldn't lose to the Juyin sect at all. The Juyin sect was currently in a period of crisis. The Iron Mask Immortal was about to pass away, and the Yuanmu Immortal was injured. It was no different from the other sects that only had 1 nascent soul cultivator. It was the best opportunity. Since fellow Taoist Han said so, has the sect been notified? Someone asked slowly after thinking it through. Han Shizhi smiled. A few hours ago, I already sent the message. Among the cultivators, a few glanced at each other and whispered to each other to discuss. A few thought for a moment and used various methods to send the message, and some did nothing. Is it really worth it? Someone hesitated. To mobilize such a large force. For the sake of the vermilion bird. The Juyin sect has been planning for more than 100,000 years. Whether it's worth it or not, it's up to you all to decide. Han Shizhi withdrew from the crowd, closed his eyes, and sat down cross-legged. Mo Tiange, and the others all heard this conversation. Han Shizhi's scheme was open and aboveboard. Even if they heard it, it wouldn't be a big deal. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment, then walked towards Ling Yunhe. Fellow Taoist Ling, tell me the truth, Mo Tiange said after casting the soundproof barrier. What's Juyin sect's attitude? What's their attitude towards you and us? Ling Yunhe sat cross-legged in silence. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time he said, I told you the Juyin sect doesn't trust me anymore. That's all. Mo Tiange asked. Ling Yunhe looked at her, smiled bitterly and sighed. Fine. The truth is, Martial Uncle Yuanmu is very dissatisfied with my behavior. He thinks I'm soft-hearted, so he gave me the cold shoulder after we returned from the Sea of Returning Ruins. Why? Does it need to be said? Ling Yunhe looked at her with a complicated gaze. I didn't get the vermilion bird bow, so Martial Uncle Yuanmu vented his anger on me. I'm close to you, and now he knows I'm with you. But he didn't tell me about the black tortoise. Mo Tiange was silent. In that case, it also had something to do with them. What? What about your elder? Didn't he put in a good word for you? Ling Yunhe sighed again. You don't know. But when we left the Immortal Palace, my great-grandfather was plotted against and most of his cultivation was destroyed. Now he's recuperating in Sky Snow City, but his injuries are too serious, so it's basically impossible for him to recover. Mo Tiange was surprised. Didn't that mean the Ling family's status had dropped a lot? Ling Yunhe knew what she was thinking when he saw her expression, so he continued to say, because of this, when I returned from the Sea of Returning Ruins, I immediately entered closed-door meditation to form my nascent soul. The position of the sect head is important, but nascent soul cultivators are the foundation of the Ling family. Mo Tiange was silent for a long time before she sighed. I'm really sorry. She understood the situation Ling Yunhe was talking about very well. He offended the head, and the nascent soul cultivators of the clan couldn't recover their cultivation. So he was forced to form his nascent soul to replace Ling Shiyu's position. But even so, the Ling family could be considered to have lost its power, right? Master Taoist Yuanmu wouldn't be able to let go of his grudge unless Ling Yunhe advanced to the late stage one day. And this wasn't unrelated to them. Ling Yunhe shook his head softly. Even without you guys, it'd still be the same. Master Taoist Yuanmu was dissatisfied with his attitude. Even without them, these things would have happened sooner or later. But don't you have the soul restraining bead? Mo Tiange said with a frown. For no other reason but because you're the successor of the patriarch's holy relic, I should be a bit more lenient with you. Ling Yunhe smiled. The most important thing is having the soul restraining bead. If I didn't have it, what would I be? There are more than 10 nascent soul cultivators in Juyin sect. I've just advanced, so I'm ordinary and unworthy of their attention. Once the soul restraining bead recognizes me as its master, I'll become the unique one who can't be boasted about or hit. Mo Tiange understood what he meant. Under normal circumstances, the soul restraining bead could increase his weight. But when other people's dissatisfaction with him accumulated to a certain extent, the soul restraining bead would become an eyesore. She couldn't touch him and didn't like him, so she could only treat him coldly. Ling Yunhe said quietly, after I returned to the Sea of Ruins, Martial Uncle Yuanmu thought I wasn't good enough, and planned to choose another successor. Unfortunately, the soul restraining bead can't recognize a new master. In this case, my position is very awkward. After a moment of silence, Mo Tiange asked softly, will they just watch you trapped here and not lend a helping hand? They won't, Ling Yunhe said confidently. No matter what, I'm still a disciple of Juyin sect. Martial Uncle Yuanmu just doesn't like me. But he won't put me to death. Then they'll come. Ling Yunhe stared at the door. They just want to teach me a lesson, and make me understand that Juyin sect is my support, and you guys are just outsiders. In all fairness, Mo Tiange didn't think what Master Taoist Yuanmu did was wrong. Since he thought Ling Yunhe wasn't reliable enough to shoulder Juyin sect, he should erase his unique influence in Juyin sect, and let him be an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. But she thought Master Taoist Yuanmu was too hasty in judging Ling Yunhe to be unable to shoulder such a big responsibility. Did he think he was soft-hearted just because he saw her as a friend? She remembered that Ling Yunhe didn't show any mercy to Ling Yunfei and Tian Jiqian who betrayed him. If one day, her existence affected his and the sect's interests, she believed he would do the same. On the contrary, Master Taoist Yuanmu was taking things for granted. Nowadays, the human world was becoming more and more chaotic. Instead of offending her and Xianqing school behind her, it was better to let go of that matter and make fewer enemies. After all, the vermilion bird bough was originally ownerless. Qinshi being able to obtain it was his fated chance, not something he forcibly seized from Juyin sect. Presumably, Master Taoist Yuanmu didn't have a clear understanding of the current situation due to the prosperity of Juyin sect in the past 10,000 years. Before they arrived at Juyin sect, there was already a commotion outside. Emotinga secretly felt a headache coming on. Sure enough, these nascent soul cultivators couldn't wait any longer. They wanted to seize the opportunity before Juyin sect arrived to snatch the bough. With that thought in mind, she stood up. This was going to be a tough battle. Although Juyin sect wouldn't let them off easily, they had to hold on until Juyin sect arrived. Only then would they have a chance to escape. Chapter 645. In the dark belly of the mountain, there was a long and wide canyon. It looked like a mark left by an immortal. The walls on both sides were vertical and steep, and black gas filled the air. Beside the canyon stood a tall man in black. He looked at the churning black gas in the canyon, the wandering ghost cultivators, and the refined corpses beside him. He was silent. After some time, a figure in a green scholarly robe flew over and stood behind him. Senior Moonshadow. This person cupped his hands. Although he called him senior, there was no respect in his tone. The man in black, who was Demon Lord Moonshadow, turned around and looked at the middle-aged scholar in front of him. Without the cloak, his face was still blurry. It seemed to be because of his cultivation method. Fellow Taoist Han, Demon Lord Moonshadow said slowly. This middle-aged scholar was Han Shizhi. Han Shizhi still looked calm. After he formed his nascent soul, he was no longer like before. He looked elegant on the outside but ruthless on the inside. It looked like he was the same on the outside, but it was even more confusing. There is already a chaotic battle over there. I think they can hold on for a while. When will Juyin sect arrive? Hearing this, Demon Lord Moonshadow laughed sinisterly. Juyin sect always does things in a watertight manner. When the time comes, they will naturally appear. Han Shizhi squinted. What about old Donkey Ma? Senior, do you want to share some of the loot with him? The eyes of the Moonshadow Demon Lord flickered. Why? Can't bear to? Han Shizhi snorted and said disdainfully. This old fellow does something that makes people willing to part with him. When he works, he doesn't see anyone. It's easy to take advantage of others. Ha! Demon Lord Moonshadow laughed. Even so, without him, how can we confuse those people? Han Shizhi said coldly, this old thing. Sooner or later, I will make him suffer. That is a matter for the future, Demon Lord Moonshadow said. We will talk about it in the future. The two of them were silent for a while. Demon Lord Moonshadow asked, Mister, you should be here by now, right? Han Shizhi nodded. Teacher has already set off, but it is not convenient to use the public transportation array. He needs some time. Old Yuan Mu has already left Juyin sect. We cannot delay. Han Shizhi was more confident about this. Even if we can't find Yuan Zhen, we can at least delay him for a while. That's enough. The Moonshadow Demon Lord nodded. I hope it goes smoothly. With a wave of the heaven and earth fan, an azure dragon soared into the sky, bringing with it boundless golden light that spread out resplendently. Emotingo pulled Nia Wushang. The two of them retreated slightly, and the cloud-soaring crane took their place. Wushang, are you okay? She asked. Nia Wushang's complexion was pale. She took out a black jade talisman from her bosom and lightly pinched it. That black aura was quickly absorbed by her, and her complexion quickly became better. I'm fine. I'll be fine after resting for a while. When she was escaping from the Moonshadow Demon Lord's pursuit, she had expended too much energy and sustained many minor injuries. Although she had rested for more than half a month, she still felt tired easily. She looked at the entrance worriedly. These people seemed to have reached a consensus. Could they resist? Emotienga also had the same thought. The two of them glanced at each other, then tacitly retreated to the side and sat down to meditate. The six of them and the beast took turns to guard the door, determined not to let anyone in. The cultivators who were blocked outside watched them, so they simply imitated them and discussed taking turns. In this way, the pressure on them increased sharply. After all, there were more than 20 nascent soul cultivators. They could exhaust them to death. Hold on, Ling Yunhe said with a firm gaze. Juyan sect won't leave me in the lurch. If we hold on, we'll live. Seeing him like this, Emotienga couldn't help but secretly sigh. She also hoped what Ling Yunhe said was right, and that Juyan sect wouldn't give up on him. However, what if Juyan sect really gave up on him? After thinking for a while, Emotienga shook her head. They wouldn't. Even if it wasn't for Ling Yunhe, they had to come for the soul-restricting bead and black tortoise. They didn't expect they would guard for 3 days. At first, they used their strength to suppress others, but later, they completely relied on medicinal pills to hold on. Seeing that the medicinal pills were gradually running out, Emotienga started to worry. Except for Nie Wushang and Yang Qingji, everyone else needed medicinal pills to replenish their spiritual aura. Although every one of them was quite wealthy, nascent soul cultivators would consume a lot of energy in fights of magical powers. Moreover, once they started fighting, it would be easier for them to win or lose, compared to low-level cultivators. In addition, high-grade medicinal pills were incomparably precious. No matter how abundant they couldn't be eaten like jelly beans like aura-refining cultivators. She hesitated for a long time, but when she looked outside, she made up her mind. Senior Marshal Brother, she said in a low voice, we don't have enough medicinal pills. Should I take some? She signaled Jing Xingji to take his place and stepped back. From Emotienga's eyes he saw her meaning. He frowned slightly. You want to, N? She paused for a moment then explained. Juyan sect probably won't give up on Ling Yunhe. But for them, having none is better than having them. Who knows if Juyan sect will wait until we can't hold on any longer to save Ling Yunhe. She pondered silently for a while then said, what you said makes sense. Then I'll go get some? She quickly glanced at the people present and nodded. I'll protect you. Emotienga understood what he meant and said, in the Middle Ages, there were many strange storage magic weapons. She flashed a smile at her. The 3-yang real fire sword was unleashed. Countless dazzling sword lights surrounded her tightly. Under the cover of the sword lights, it was very difficult for others to detect slight spiritual aura fluctuations. Emotienga entered the virtual sky world, went to the storeroom, and put all the medicinal pills she could use into her interspatial ring. After thinking for a moment, she released Xiaofan and Feifei, and told them to stay put. When she came out of the virtual sky world, she put away the 3-yang real fire sword, and distributed the medicinal pills to the others. Ling Yunhe was surprised to see the medicinal pills she gave him. Fellow Taoist these, Emotienga said calmly. I prepared a lot of them in my storage magic weapon, but it's a bit troublesome to go in and out. Their behavior just now could be hidden from the cultivators outside, but it couldn't be hidden from Ling Yunhe and the others. After listening to her explanation, Ling Yunhe didn't doubt it at all. He just thought her magic weapon was unique, so he nodded and took it. Thank you. Jing Xingji didn't ask anything. He was already used to this couple being mysterious and doing strange things from time to time. However, when he saw the high-grade medicinal pills Emotienga gave him, he couldn't restrain his jealousy. You two have too many good things. Back in the Immortal Palace in the returning ruined sea, he was overjoyed when he took a bottle of 9 Revolutions Yang restoration pills from Emotienga. But now she gave him 2 bottles. Jing Xingji regretted it. If he knew this would happen, he would have blackmailed her more. Don't talk so much nonsense. Fight seriously. Emotienga said. Jing Xingji swallowed a handful of medicinal pills. He didn't say any nonsense, and continued to block them. This was a matter of life and death. With these medicinal pills, everyone was confident. The people outside had a longer rotation than them, so they had enough time to completely recover their spiritual aura. However, they had one shortcoming: they weren't united. Everyone had their own plans, and wanted to contribute less, so they wouldn't fight with their lives on the line. Looking at these people, Jing Xingji signaled Qin Shi with his eyes. His gaze seemed to be focused on one of the cultivators. This cultivator was in the peak of the early stage, and looked middle-aged. His natal magic weapon was a pair of several inches long, shining with golden light. The two nails transformed into golden light when attacking and a golden screen when defending. They switched between smoothly and weren't weak at all. However, having a balance between offense and defense also meant that neither side was outstanding. Qin Shi nodded slightly, indicating that he understood what he meant. As the sword lights crossed each other, Jing Xingji suddenly burst out. Countless sword lights flew towards that early-stage cultivator. That early-stage cultivator turned pale with fright. His magic weapon was about to transform into a golden screen. But in the next moment, an extremely sharp red sword light suddenly appeared, interrupting his movement. That cultivator was actually calm. He searched his Qingquan bag, and a white light shone, firmly protecting his body. Qin Shi pointed his finger, and a flame suddenly sprang up from that sword light. A vast, sacred, and fiery intent of destruction spread out without any obstruction. This might forcefully suppress that early-stage cultivator. At the same time, a golden light suddenly appeared in the incomparably resplendent sword lights. It gave off a similarly vast aura, and the ruthlessness and killing intent contained within it made people tremble. This golden light merged with the sword light. Everyone seemed to hear the roar of a white tiger, and their minds were shaken. That early-stage cultivator faced this sharp killing intent head-on. He only had time to send his nascent soul out of his body before he felt a chill on his body, and his body was smashed to pieces. The red sword light that had already flown out appeared again. With a clear cry, gorgeous flaming tail feathers curled up. In the flames with the sacred aura, the nascent soul was instantly burnt black and turned into smoke. Even his body disappeared without a trace. Not even his Qingquan bag was left behind. Everyone was aghast. They didn't expect that these two people would suddenly attack and kill a cultivator with lightning speed. Even his nascent soul didn't have a chance to escape. What powerful skills! What ruthless methods! What kind of spell did they use just now? That kind of power was far higher than the cultivation technique they cultivated. Some people thought that fellow Taoist Qin was the person who snatched Julian Sek's vermilion bird bow. A firebird appeared just now. Could it be the vermilion bird's inheritance? What about the other person? He was obviously an unknown sword cultivator, but his strength wasn't inferior to fellow Taoist Qin's. Could it be that he also obtained the divine beast's inheritance? What about Ling Yunhe? If he absorbed the black tortoise's relic, plus the soul-restricting bead, wouldn't Yuanqu defeat Yuanzhong? He might even be able to compete with Queen Yuanzhong. For a moment, everyone was both shocked and greedy. At this time, Yang Qingji, who had been covering them from the side, rolled up his ghost face banner. The ghost face banner flew out and fiercely bit another cultivator. That cultivator seemed to wake up from a dream. He took out a top-grade nascent soul talisman and retreated quickly, letting others take his place. When he retreated, he saw that the place where the ghost face accidentally bit him was already black and purple, and a walnut-sized lump floated on it. That person couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He thought to himself that if he hadn't made a prompt decision to give up the top-grade talisman, he might have ended up like that person and lost his life. Right? Everyone else saw this unforeseen event and couldn't help but retreat a few steps. Those two people were very strong. This Yang Qingji wasn't easy to deal with either. There were also Ling Yunhe and Imo Tiange behind them. One was nurtured by Julian's sect, while the other was only in the core formation realm, but dared to challenge a group of nascent soul cultivators. Even that unremarkable black-robed woman wasn't someone to be trifled with. For a moment, everyone hesitated. With such a group of powerful people, was it necessary for them to throw their lives away for others? Chapter 646. Where's Yuanjin? Outside the Carefree Valley, Reverend Yuanmu asked. A core formation cultivator guarding the big tree at the entrance of the Carefree Valley reported. Head seat Marshal Uncle Yuanjin said he's keeping watch inside. If Head seat Marshal Uncle arrives, just send him a message. Reverend Yuanmu's brows furrowed deeply. This person said he wanted to contact Yuanjin. But in fact, he'd already sent a summoning talisman to Yuanjin the moment he arrived. But Yuanjin didn't receive it. The current situation was really strange. Senior Marshal Brother Yuanmu, another middle-stage cultivator with a big beard, came forward and asked. Junior Marshal Brother Yuanjin couldn't have been involved, right? He can't be. Reverend Yuanmu's brows sank. It's just letting him keep watch. It's not like it's something difficult to do. Could it be that he can't even do this? Hearing the displeasure in Reverend Yuanmu's tone, the big-bearded cultivator didn't say anything else. He just asked, then what do we do next? Go in directly? Reverend Yuanmu was also conflicted over this problem. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, Yuanjin has always been reliable in his work. It's impossible for him to disappear for no reason. The big-bearded cultivator understood the meaning behind his words. Senior Marshal Brother suspects that someone has trapped Junior Marshal Brother Yuanjin? Reverend Yuanmu nodded. Yuanjin must have encountered a problem that's hard to solve. There were 3 of them, but they actually disappeared without a trace. Someone must have been targeting them. Perhaps it's targeting us. It can't be, right? The big-bearded cultivator said. Who would be so daring? Seizing treasures is one thing. But if they deliberately killed our sect's cultivators, aren't they afraid of angering Juyan's sect? Reverend Yuanmu obviously wasn't so optimistic. He said, Senior Marshal Brother Ironface has passed away. But in these few decades, I've also been injured. Who knows, there might be someone who thinks the chance to turn things around has come. The big-bearded cultivator knew what Reverend Yuanmu said made sense, so he asked, since Senior Marshal Brother Yuanjin thinks something has happened to him, should we go find him first, or save Junior Marshal Brother Ling first? Spiritual Master Yuanmu's brows furrowed, clearly very troubled. Let's save Yuanjin first. That kid has always had good fortune. He shouldn't die for the time being. The brat he was referring to was Ling Yunha. Big Beard thought for a while and said, Senior Marshal Brother Yuanmu, Yuanjin has 3 people, and he doesn't have anything that people covet. Even if he's trapped for a while, his life shouldn't be in danger. On the other hand, Junior Marshal Brother Ling, these days, all the nascent soul cultivators of the major sects have come out and are rushing over here. I'm afraid that Junior Marshal Brother Ling won't be able to hold on for long. We can't afford to lose the spirit restraining pearl. Now that he claims to have inherited the Black Tortoise's legacy, shouldn't we go over earlier? Reverend Yuanmu snorted coldly and said, Why did you save him earlier? He was becoming more and more outrageous. He clearly knew that those people had great enmity with the sect, but he still chose to associate with them. It was one thing for him to associate with them, but when there was news of the Black Tortoise, he didn't inform the sect and instead chose to travel with them. Does he even care about the sect? Don't be angry, Senior Marshal Brother, Big Beard hurriedly persuaded. Junior Marshal Brother Ling is young. It's inevitable that he'll feel unhappy after suffering some setbacks. He doesn't have the guts to ignore the sect. The Ling family is relying on him to support it now. Reverend Yuanmu calmed down a little and said, I know this too. Suddenly falling from the sky, he'll definitely feel disappointed. But he's not living up to expectations, so what can we do? The burden of Juyan's sect is too heavy. I don't have the guts to hand it over to someone who does things too casually. Big Beard was a little disapproving. In Junior Marshal Brother's opinion, it's still too early to say this. Historically, the first seat's cultivation has always been at the late nascent soul level. Junior Marshal Brother Ling hasn't formed his nascent soul for long, so it's hard to say whether he has the fated chance to reach the late nascent soul level. If there's really a day when he reaches the late nascent soul level, even if Senior Marshal Brother doesn't like it, we can only hand it over to him. Reverend Yuanmu knew that what he said was true. He sighed and said, Let's look for Yuanjin first. There's something strange about this matter. I keep feeling that there's a conspiracy. If we don't find Yuanjin, we can't calm down. As for that Ling Yunha kid, the spirit restraining pearl can only recognize someone who practices the ice and fire technique as its master. So there's nothing to be afraid of. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Big Beard didn't say anything else. Yes, senior martial brother. He sighed inwardly. This senior martial brother of his had always been suspicious and serious. Once he became suspicious, it was like a thorn in his heart. If he didn't find Yuanjin, he wouldn't be able to get rid of his worries. However, the moment he said this, it was clear that he had made up his mind to give up on Ling Yunha if they didn't make it in time. After all, Ling Yunha had lost his identity as the successor. Ling Yunha alone wasn't as important as Yuanjin and the other two. Thinking of Ling Xiyu, who had always been on good terms with him, Big Beard sighed inwardly. Without Ling Yunha, the Ling family would really decline. Nanguitian and Taoist Ru Yi were flying. After a while, they stopped at the end of a stone path. They looked surprised. What's going on? Nanguitian looked at the densely packed rocks in front of him and frowned. Taoist Ru Yi went forward to take a look. His face darkened. The road is blocked. The two of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. This was the small path that Yuing Demon Monarch had brought them here. It was said that when Starfall City was searching for demonic mines, they accidentally discovered a strange aura and spent many years digging it out. Without this secret path, it would be difficult for them to enter. They had seen with their own eyes how terrifying the black water formation was. Now that this path was blocked, they used their divine senses and realized that it was completely blocked. Even nascent soul cultivators like them couldn't clear it. How could this be? After thinking for a while, Nanguitian asked, Taoist Ru Yi, in your opinion, who exactly is blocking this path? What's their intention? Taoist Ru Yi thought for a while and said, since they've blocked the path, it means that they don't want us to go out or that they don't want anyone else to come in. It's easy to explain why they don't want anyone else to come in. It's just that more and more people have come, and the competition is getting harder. But if they don't want us to go out? Seeing that Taoist Ru Yi didn't say anything, Nanguitian asked, so what if they don't want us to go out? After a long while Taoist Ru Yi sighed. They must be harboring evil intentions. Nanguitian narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Taoist Ru Yi said, why do we have to go out? Apart from the ownership of the treasures, there's also... Nanguitian pondered for a while and said in shock, run for our lives. Taoist Ru Yi nodded solemnly. The two of them fell silent again. After a long while, Nanguitian said, perhaps they're trying to prevent those people from escaping? Taoist Ru Yi smiled bitterly. Brother Nan, when did you learn to deceive yourself? Nanguitian smiled bitterly as well. That's right. I shouldn't have deceived myself. There are so many of us. How can they escape so easily? There's no need for them to use such a method. It's just that I can't believe that someone would be so generous. He was glad that the people from the Dawning Pill sect and the Five Elements Valley hadn't arrived yet. No matter who it is, we only have two choices. Taoist Ru Yi had already considered the consequences. The first choice is to go back immediately and ask them to temporarily stop fighting and join forces to kill our way out. The second choice is to join the other side. Before Nanguitian could say anything, a clear applause rang out in the quiet belly of the mountain. Clap, clap, pa. Along with the voice, the Moon Shadow Demon King approached them silently. He stood not far away from them and said, my two friends are indeed smart people. I wonder what your choice will be. Hearing the sound, the two of them had already turned around. When they saw the Moon Shadow Demon Monarch approaching them, they could not help but be astonished. Was this old ghost already so terrifying? However, they were all old monsters who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. With a flash in their minds, they recovered. Under such circumstances, what else could they not guess? Fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow, Taoist Ru Yi said in a deep voice, so you didn't plan so much for some cultivation technique at all? No, the Moon Shadow Demon Lord said. At first, I did it for that junior's cultivation technique. But I didn't expect that the junior could actually call those few helpers over. My efforts were all for naught. I knew that they would definitely come here, so I suddenly had an idea. This is a really good place. Nanguitian stared at him and asked, even if you only thought about it later, you must have wanted to kill him a long time ago, right? What good would it do you if you killed us? You're a demonic cultivator, and you've only occupied one city. Even if you want to unify the demon territory, you don't have to kill us all. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord smiled gently. Fellow Taoist Nan, you seem to think that unifying the demon territory is very easy? Nanguitian did not speak. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord continued. Putting aside how troublesome that old witch Yi Shuang is, the current situation is that the Tao cultivators have been strong for too long. Even if we unify the demon territory, we can't restore the glory days when the demon supremacy was still alive. So fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow wants to be the second demon supremacy. Taoist Ru Yi was expressionless as he said slowly, if you kill all of us here, the Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucian sects will not be able to recover from this setback. Even fellow Taoist Yi Shuang, who is the only demonic cultivator who can resist you, will not be able to escape. Then you can unify the demon territory and even dominate Yunzhong. Thinking of this, he frowned slightly. That's not right. This is not something that you can do alone. You must have helpers, right? Of course. The eyes on the Moon Shadow Demon Lord's blurry face flickered. Fellow Taoist Ru Yi, you think too highly of me. I do want to be the second demon supremacy, but I'm not arrogant enough to want to dominate Yunzhong. How could it be easy to kill so many nascent soul cultivators? As long as he could kill those whom he had never dealt with, it would be enough. He only wanted to create a huge demon territory that had never been seen since ancient times. He did not want to become the master of Yunzhong. He knew himself very well. When the demon supremacy was still alive, Fu Yaozi and the other 3 sages had suppressed him, let alone him. Then, Nanguitian sighed. Fellow Taoist Lunar Shadow, how do you plan to deal with us? The Moon Shadow Demon Lord stared at them for a long time and said, it's not difficult to kill the 2 of you, but that would be too much of a pity. Just like what you said just now, I'll give you 2 choices. Defeat me and escape, or join us. He used the word we, not me. So, have you decided? Nanguitian and Taoist Ru Yi seemed to see a confident smile on that blurry face. The 2 of them looked at each other and said in unison, we'll join you. Good. The Moon Shadow Demon Lord really smiled this time. As he turned around he said, follow me. The next moment he stopped in his tracks. A purple-clothed person came out from a corner. She was also silent. She sighed and said, Ying, so this is your plan. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.